Big Bad Mama doing that out response to Kent video.
I want to address is that evolution isn't a faith-based belief system, while religion generally is. So the reason is there's no evidence besides a book for the reason for belief in the Bible. And faith is a fine thing, but evolution doesn't operate on faith. It does operate on evidence and what we have observed. So the dogs not producing non-dogs, or the cats producing non-cats. That's silly, because we know that is not an accurate description of evolution. Evolution does not say that will happen because of the law of monophyly. But I agree with Kent's definition of science, however elementary it might be. So we do observe evolution. So the peppered moth in the Industrial Revolution was largely white, and it could use that to blend into stone and upon trees. When the Industrial Revolution happened in England, it covered most of those surfaces with soot, and so the peppered moth, the white variant, stood out quite significantly and was eaten. In that time, the black variant of that same moth, which was a less dominant trait.
Yeah.
Should we go back to Kent Hovind's opening statement if we can find it? Did he make an opening statement here somewhere? Maybe he's after. Yeah, we'll keep going.
You want to keep going?
Yeah, might as well.
Okay.
The nature of evidence for evolution.
Okay, thank you. Good timing. Kent, we'll throw it back to you. Take roughly 2 to 3 minutes to respond. The floor is yours.
Well, thank you. Thank you. That's a fair question. What about the peppered moth? This was often given in the early days as one of the best evidences for evolution. Here's what happened. The peppered moth has always produced a variety of colors in its baby. Some are dark, some are light. Well, and when the trees were light colored, the birds could see the dark ones easier and they would eat them. The light ones had more camouflage. And so somebody counted the moths in England and said there's 95% light moths and 5% dark. Then the Industrial Revolution, he started burning coal in the factories, the trees turned black. And they went around and counted the moths again and found out that now there's only 5% light and 95% dark. Okay. They're still a moth. They change anything. They already had those colors.
Can you pause it there, please,
This
Logan?
is natural selection. You see, Charles, our skeptic guy.
So, of course, right there, Kent is admitting natural selection. The environment changed, and therefore the moths that were selected were the darker ones because they weren't being eaten by birds and that kind of thing. So that's how natural selection works. It isn't a random process like Kent has said we believe. So Kent has said, you believe it's all random. But no, the environment changing is not a random thing. And the moths that were selected were the dark ones. And Kent just admitted natural selection occurs and therefore evolution is true. He just doesn't define the limits of it. Hi, Deviant Outcast.
Hi.
Hi.
Doing.
Okay.
Let me know, Deviant, if you want anything to add here, if you know what we're kind of discussing. If not, we'll keep going with the video.
Yeah,
Stop it
keep
at
going.
any.
I missed the beginning of it. So I'll catch
Peppered
up.
moths. Peppered moths.
Oh. No.
Keep going, Logan. We'll play some more.
It's natural selection selects. It doesn't create anything. Nothing new was created here. It started off a moth. It ended up a moth. Nothing changed. That's not evidence that the moth came from an amoeba and were related to pine trees. So this is one of the lies I cover in my textbook. It's in all the textbooks, in my seminar. It's in all the textbooks, though, as evidence for evolution. Tulsa Zoo still has a big display showing how this is evidence for evolution. Here's a biology textbook, evidence for evolution. This is not evidence for evolution. It's evidence for natural selection. It's evidence the designer of those moths was really smart. He gave them the ability
Logan,
to
can you
produce a
stop it for 1
variety of
second?
babies, so some will survive.
So again, he's saying natural selection is occurring, and we wouldn't expect to see huge changes in the time period that he's mentioning. So it's kind of he's misrepresenting what evolutionists or scientists believe. We wouldn't expect to see big changes in those moss in that small amount of time since the Industrial Revolution. But the fact that they did change due to a change in the environment is, and he admitted it, natural selection's true.
Yeah, I agree. I have to ask because I have a hard time hearing. Is it moth, like the ones
Yes.
that fly? Okay.
Yes,
Okay.
like
Not
a
moths.
butterfly.
Ah, right. Right. Good. I was confused in the beginning, but yeah.
Should we keep going?
Keep on. Keep going.
Whatever background they land on. They can stay in a dark background or light background. It's not, that didn't explain how the moth came to be with its unbelievably complex gene code. One chromosome from a moth is more complicated than the space shuttle. And you think it happened by chance? The fact that, see, natural selection or artificial selection,
Okay, pause.
either one, they both select. They don't.
This phrase that he keeps using, it's more complicated than the space shuttle. How could you even equate those two things? How could you compare one to the other? What does he mean with more complex than?
So he's saying humans built the space shuttle, and because these organisms are more complex than the space shuttle, they must have had a designer like the human designed the space shuttle, but yet the design is much more complex that God did. Instead of, this came about through billions of years of natural evolutionary processes. He can't get his mind around, or he doesn't want to, that natural processes are complex on their own. They don't need a designer in order to operate in the universe or on Earth.
Right. But yeah, right. I still can't really see the.
There is no relation between those two.
Right. It's not just me being
No,
stupid. Good.
it's totally a false analogy or what have you. Oh, one thing I want to mention, you notice how Kent will always choose organisms that are very far apart in our evolutionary history, like humans and pine trees or humans and amoebas. He won't go and discuss humans and Homo habilis or Australopithecus or bears and dogs, even something that we have evidence that they share a common ancestor. He won't pick organisms that are close like that. Do you know what I mean, Deviant?
Yeah, of course. No, because it would be much more difficult to ignore the similarities, and it's a way to make it sound ridiculous.
Exactly. It's just used to mock the theory of evolution.
Right. Which
and
to
so
me
the person who knows nothing about it they're just gonna hear those two, that analogy between amoeba and human, and think ridiculous.
Exactly. And at the same time ignore the fact that, my goodness, what was that?
I think that was Logan's something going on.
Oh, okay. I thought it might be my headphones. It shouldn't be, but
How are you doing, by the way?
Oh, better now. Much better
Good.
now.
Good.
Yes, I'm really glad this stream was
Should we
made
keep
to
going?
happen. Yes,
Good.
do it.
Logan, whenever you're ready.
Create anything, but you want to give it creativity. So definition of evolution is one that definitely needs to be worked on here. Evolution, the textbook says, the process by which different living organisms are thought to have developed and diversified from earlier forms. Okay? The gradual development of something, especially from a simple to more complex form. We don't see this, okay? Evolution is a gradual process that changes place over many generations, during which species of animals and plants and insects slowly change some of their physical characteristics. This is dreaming. This isn't observed. We see selecting the dark moths or selecting the light moths. That's not creating anything. That's not evidence for evolution. Evolution is defined as a change in inherited traits of a population of organisms through successive generations. I believe what happened with the peppered moth, the Industrial Revolution darkened the trees. The dark moths survived better, more camouflaged against the background of the tree. The birds couldn't find them. And so when they cleaned up their factories over there and the trees turned light again, the population shifted right back to mostly light moths. And today, it's mostly light-colored peppered moth. But today, they still have some dark ones. This is part of the normal gene code of the moth. It's got nothing to do with evolution. Sorry, try again.
All right. Thank you, Kent, for that roughly 2 to 3
Could
minute
you stop it
response.
for 1 second?
Another
Logan,
skeptical guy.
please?
Let's hand it back to you. Feel free to.
I mean, Kent just admitted his idea for the peppered moth is basically what he just read off of that sheet, that it takes many generations and it's changes over time. I mean, I don't see where he disagreed with anything he just read there.
Right. And he keeps saying this, that this isn't evidence for evolution. So what does he propose evolution is? He's very keen on saying this isn't evolution, but what is? Then what is?
Yet he uses the term natural selection and says natural selection exists. So
Yeah.
it's just ridiculous. But evolution, according to him, is 100% untrue. Those two things he constantly says, and it's the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. What does he think one of the major mechanisms of the theory of evolution is? It's natural selection.
All right.
Anyway, you know, this guy he's debating, I guess we should just listen to him, but he's made a lot of sense so far. I don't even know if I have any comments to make, but I guess we'll just listen.
Respond or rebut any point you'd like to.
Yeah, so absolutely. There are two populations of moths, and the white ones were eaten and the black ones stayed around. So that same mechanism is the same mechanism of how evolution works. They're the exact same mechanism. Both of those processes are the same. The trait there of the black colored moth was more suited to the environment in which the moth lived than the white colored, right? So if the Industrial Revolution continued in the same level that it did, with soot covering everything, then we would expect to see absolutely no resurgence of the white moth, except in very rare cases, and a continuation of just the black moth. So that is a
Logan, can you pause for 1 second,
naturally
please?
selected to.
Thank you. Do you think it would be better if we just kind of went fast forward to the next Hoven section? What do you think, Deviant? Because we'll have more to probably talk about.
Yeah.
Is that okay, Logan? See if you can find Kent again. That's probably good right there. Good job.
With intellectual honesty that is not an example of evolution.
Okay, thank you for that response. We'll throw it back to Kent. And then since this will be a few rounds of 2 to 3 minutes each, we'll transition into more of a free-flowing phase where we can ask each other direct questions and converse more so. So Kent, you have 3 minutes for a response. Go ahead.
Okay, first of all, what happened with the peppered moth was not an example of a mutation. They already had dark moths and light moths, nothing mutated at all. The ratio of the population changed, a ratio of an already existing population of dark and light moths. Study it carefully. Nothing changed in the moth. The ratio of the population changed. You could find cities where the population is largely Native American or largely African American or largely Norwegian American. But
so from what I'm looking at, scientists have discovered the specific mutation that turned moths black during the Industrial Revolution. So I think Kent is wrong there. Anyway, that's what I've read. I don't know too much about it, but I've read that they have identified that specific gene. So anyway, that's all I have to say about that.
It's the ratio of the population. So you're incorrect if you believe mutations had anything to do with the peppered moth. And the peppered, and there are no such things as a beneficial mutation that have been observed. Beneficial mutations are a dream. All mutations observed so far have been fatal or harmful or neutral. They do nothing. I'm not aware of any beneficial mutations. And it would take trillions of them to change an amoeba to a whale. So I'm sorry. You mentioned about beneficial, about change over time. This is always the god of the evolutionist, time. Given enough years, given enough billions of years, it'll work. So we see dark moths and light moths. Look at that, boys and girls. That's proof. If at billions of years, the moth would turn to a whale. That's the logic.
Can we pause it for a second?
Skeptic guy, are you skeptical of what you've been taught on this topic?
So we do have some examples of beneficial mutations. We have nylonase, the nylon-eating bacteria. They can eat short molecules of nylon, and it's basically the mutation in these bacteria involved insertion of a single nucleotide in the genetic material. We have antibiotic-resistant bacteria. So there's HIV immunity in humans, the CCR5-delta32. So we have seen beneficial mutations. Kent is wrong there. Most mutations are near neutral anyway. They're not beneficial or harmful.
Right, and also, I mean, what is to be viewed as beneficial or detrimental is all dependent on the surrounding circumstances and the environment.
Right.
So to just say, as I've heard Matt Powell and I believe Kent say many times, that there are no such thing as a positive mutation is just nonsense. It's not true.
They're really all positive. I mean, think about, there's a lot of positive mutations to get if you're say a coast-dwelling or a water-dwelling mammal in order to develop fins over time.
Right.
And become a whale or a dolphin, then those were positive mutations that probably, I don't know that those can be identified, but it definitely benefited that animal to go be able to swim out in the ocean and eat fish. And so the ones that developed those very slowly, but developed those fins were the ones that were able to survive and prosper.
Right, exactly.
Keep on going, Logan, there. Thank you.
Or just skeptical of creation. You should be skeptical of what they taught you because this simply it's not observable. Science is what we can observe, study, and test. Do an experiment. You will find the peppered moths always make baby peppered moths. There are no exceptions. And it's not a mutation. That's it. So she said this is the same mechanism.
Is that you,
will be
Logan?
the moth
Yeah.
that's going to
Your
drive other things. Well, then it's not going to go anywhere. The car's in park. It's not going to drive anything. All that happened was
it's kind of, the stream is roboting a bit. Kent's stream
Yeah.
is there a way to fix that, do you think, or no? Logan, are you still with us here?
Yeah, no, I don't think it's me. I think it's on his end.
Okay.
Okay. What was he just talking about right then?
Yeah, he said
Peppered moths give birth to peppered moths. Okay, Kent, come on. The guy just admitted that's part of the monophily. So, I mean, that's what scientists believe. So you're not telling them anything by that news.
and also the claim that science is what we can what's the word he uses?
Observe,
Observe,
touch, or whatever he said.
Yeah, exactly. That we can observe evolution.
Right. I mean, we can observe fossils and relate them to one another. We can observe radiometric dating results. We can observe genome comparison results. We can observe phylogenetic trees. We can observe dendrochronology and all the different age dating techniques. So I don't know where he's just wrong.
Yeah. Newsflash.
What's that?
Newsflash.
I know. I have to end the sentence. I have to end the sentence some way.
I know.
Even if it's like entirely obvious to everybody watching the stream. He's wrong.
I'm sorry.
Really? He's wrong?
Oh my goodness.
Oh God, I didn't know that until Big Bad Mama just said that. All right.
No.
All right, Ghost. Keep going.
You go.
the ratio of the population was changed by natural selection. Because of the background of the trees, the birds could eat the white ones better when the trees were dark. That's all that happened. It didn't change anything in the moth. They already had some of each, dark and light. See what's happening here? We're getting a problem with the definition of the word evolution. And I go through on my video series the meanings of the word evolution. There are 6 different meanings. Cosmic evolution, the origin of time-space matter. All these first 5 are pure.
Please pause it, Logan. I would like to read Soot Kettle's comment in the chat real quick, which is a good point. I would like Kent to show exactly where evolution claims that moths should give birth to something else. Of course, we'll never hear that from Kent, but I would like to hear it from him.
Yeah, it's the same thing with he keeps saying this isn't evolution, but he never really tells us what it is.
They try to use the word adaptation instead of evolution, thinking that no one's going to notice that they've just basically stolen the term of scientists for their own, purposes. And as far as what Kent's showing here, this is his classic 6 stages of evolution. Yet he knows very well that the topic of the debate is the theory of evolution, biological evolution. And so he's got all these chemical evolution, stellar evolution, but those are only the colloquial term, using the colloquial term evolution. We're talking about the theory of evolution. Everybody knows it. The host knows it. Everybody watching knows it. Kent knows it, but this is his way to stall for time, and it's a classic tactic of his.
Exactly. Exactly.
Ghost, when you're ready.
Early ages. Number 5 is what he's talking about. Macroevolution. Changing from one kind of animal to another. The moth did not do that. It started a moth, it ended up a moth. So I'm sorry, that's not evidence for evolution. And as far as bacteria becoming resistant to antibiotics, it's still a bacteria. You have a colony of bacteria, say you got 1,000 bacteria, and 50 of them are resistant to some kind of antibiotic. So the person takes the antibiotic, all of them die except those 50, because they already had a resistance. Then they take over and they make a bunch of babies, and now you've got a whole population of bacteria that are resistant to the antibiotic. It didn't create anything. Some of them already had the resistance. It doesn't create anything, and that's not evolution. That's in that case artificial selection. A person taking an antibiotic, killing off 95%, but not keeping the other 5 is the same as the peppered moth. You're right, it's the same mechanism, and it doesn't make anything evolve. But you guys have been taught, and you swallowed it. You should have been skeptical of that when they said this mechanism will change a moth to a whale over millions of years. You should have been skeptical of that. The other one, you use insecticides. You spray insecticides to kill the mosquitoes in your yard. Let's say you got 1,000 mosquitoes, and 100 of them have a natural resistance to this insecticide. They've already got it before you started spraying.
Can you pause for a
You
second,
spray the
please?
population.
So you notice that Kent has to make blanket denials of radiometric dating, the fossil record, the geologic column, because those are the things that give the time for organisms to evolve. So he has to completely try to throw those out 100% and focus on one little specific of genetics. And he can always claim design. He can always fall back on design for genetics. But he tries so hard to make sure that geology and radiometric dating are just dismissed out of hand without, he's never provided papers disputing radiometric dating except for those Mount St. Helens rocks that they grabbed, some creationists collected, brought to a lab that shouldn't have been, analyzing those rocks, and may have even improperly collected those rocks. So that's the only data he has against radiometric dating, potassium argon dating, and that kind of thing. So he has to try to throw those out and invalidate those in his for his viewers and fans, because that's where the deep time comes in that allows evolution to occur.
Right. Yeah, and it's part of what makes young Earth creationism a oh my goodness, what's the word?
Conspiracy theory?
Thank you. Yes.
Exactly. Yes. It's a huge conspiracy theory.
Yes. You can only make it work if you deny A, B, C, and Q, and everything in between and thereafter.
Reality. I mean, it's
Exactly.
basically a denial of reality, and it's completely making up a fictional history of the planet and the universe and fixing that in your mind. Just imagine what that does to a person's mind when they use that as the basis for their own self. Whereas, you and I know that we're apes.
Yeah.
And we like it that way.
Yeah.
I mean, it's fun. It's great.
I think it's awesome.
It's awesome. I mean, but you could call one of these people an ape and see what happens. They don't like it. They don't like it.
It's very popular.
Should we move on?
At the same time, that's a huge part of what makes modern medicine so successful, is that we do understand where we come from and how we have evolved to where we are. I mean, it's not. We're not lonesome moths in a empty sack. I don't know.
We're
That was
not
a
peppered
strange analogy.
moths on a
Forget
tree.
it. Forget it.
Okay,
Keep on.
should we keep it going?
Yeah.
All of them die except those with the insecticide resistance. Then they make all the babies for the next generation. And after a couple of times of spray, and your spray does no good, and you're wondering what happened. The mosquito evolved a new resistance? No, some of them already had it. I'll tell you what, get your 1,000 mosquitoes and see if they're resistant to a sledgehammer. I bet you'll find none of them are resistant to a sledgehammer. You will wipe out the population if you can get them all. So the insecticide resist and bacteria antibiotic and the moth, what you've given so far is evidence of amazing design. God gave the creatures the ability to produce a variety of offspring. Some will survive no matter what happens, pretty much, except maybe a sledgehammer. Okay, so try again.
Pause it real quick.
Thank you,
please,
Kent.
Logan. So there's kind of my case in point about how you can just fall back on design. And Kent just did it. He just fell back on design. He didn't explain the designer. He didn't explain the design process. He just fell back on design. And he said, well, some mosquitoes have the resistance. Well, they had it because of mutations, right?
Exactly.
That's how they were able to survive. I mean, they had it because they had the mutations. I just don't get his arguments.
No, they're very stale.
Yeah, I mean, it's a script. And Logan, what do you think? Can we move it up to Kent again?
Change to their DNA code. It's still a moth. It's not. Nothing has changed in the DNA code with the moth or the mosquito you gave or the bacteria. Nothing changed in their DNA. They're still producing baby moths. Just now they produce more of their same color that they started with. I have blonde hair, Norwegian ancestry. If I had 500 kids, probably a large percent of them would have blonde hair, and and have those characteristic traits. If a person has dark-skinned African Americans, when they produce babies, they produce dark-skinned babies. That's not.
Deviant, did you have something to say here?
No, I just said, please don't have 500 kids.
Right. He almost said they produced different varieties, but he stopped himself when he was going to say variety. I have to go back and verify that, but he stopped himself from saying the word variety there of moths. Now, I don't know where he's talking about races of humans now, but I guess we'll find out here.
Not a change in the DNA. It's already in there. Nothing with DNA changed with the moth. And the moth does not have a common ancestor with a whale. You may believe that if you'd like, but that's a religion. I wish you could understand that's something you have to believe in. Just like billions of years is something you have to believe in. It's not observable. Nobody's observed any more than probably a couple hundred years in their lifetime. Some of the older people, 9.
So every single time he makes this comparison or the claim, baseless claim, that evolution is a religion, what he's really saying, because he always tries to ridicule evolution, is that having a religious belief is something to ridicule, and it's not something to base your worldview on, or your whatever, your impression of reality on. And yet he's supposed to be religious himself.
Skeptic guy, I accept science. You're the one that ought to be skeptical of what you believe. You believe this change in the moth there's no DNA change. It's a percentage of ratio of the population that changed, which is explainable by natural selection. But it selected something that was already there. How about, why didn't any of them turn blue or green or pink or grow 12 wings or get to be 15 feet tall? None of that happened. It's still a moth, still the same kind of moth, still the peppered moth. Okay.
Okay.
And so you said,
I guess we'll stop it there for a second.
You said you provided evidence. Baloney. You provided.
So why would it need to develop 15 wings or what have you? It's suited to its niche right now as a moth. Moths have been extremely successful. Lupin, we're analyzing Kent's debate right now. So after Kent's gone, then you're welcome to come in. But we're going to, this is kind of something we set up with Logan. So anyway, you can come back after the debate with Kent is done, and we'll talk to you then. Thanks. Okay, Deviant, did you have something to say?
No, I just saw Soot's comment. His SpongeBob doll will evolve in will evolve resistant to hammers.
He's got a lot of SpongeBobs, though.
That's true. That's true.
Okay.
Yeah, keep going.
Provided evidence that creation is true is all you've done so far. You provided evidence that you don't have any evidence for evolution. You're desperate for these same things taught in the textbooks for the last 100 years, and they're all been proven wrong. The peppered moth is never, it's not evidence for evolution. Neither is bacterial resistance, antibiotic resistance, or insecticide resistance. Okay, and you said it's confirmed by multiple lines of evidence. I think this is a sign of desperation. Just to say, well, there's lots of evidence for evolution. Well, show me a specific. You think geology is evidence for evolution? I taught earth science for 15 years. You work with logic in your work, I'm sure, logic in a line of work. They're telling the kids in school that the layers of the earth are different ages. You apparently believed it. Nobody should believe that. It's the dumbest theory ever. They say the layers are different ages. This was made up in 1830. Stop and think.
So he's just saying it's the dumbest thing ever. But where's his evidence? You know, he has a science center. Where's his evidence for to contradict all the different dating techniques, radiometric dating, all the relative dating techniques, dendrochronology, ice core dating? And the guy was right to say that evolution covers many scientific disciplines. It's no longer Darwinism or neo-Darwinism. It's called evolutionary synthesis. And it includes principles of natural selection, genetics, DNA, and biogeography. So, because all those support and correlate one another. And what Kent does is he tries to nitpick one topic at a time and try to dispel evolution because he finds a little hole that he thinks design will fit into. But that's all he's got is his idea that design will fit in there. It's pretty much a God of the gaps argument at this point.
Agreed.
If the layers are different ages, where's the new material coming from? Is this the top layer coming from outer space?
Okay.
All of these layers that we see.
Sorry, Logan, but this definitely has to be addressed here. So the geologic column's going to be different depending on where you're looking at it, whether it's the Grand Canyon or you're up in North Dakota. I mean, these sedimentary layers are like leaves overlapping one another. They're not just the same layers everywhere you go. So you have a different geologic column in each area. And Kent always says, well, where's the top layer come from? Outer space? Well, no, the top layer is the last sedimentary deposition or volcanic layer that's not been eroded away. The landforms are continually uplifting or subsiding. And you have layers that are deposited and harden, and then you have layers that are eroded by wind and water, ice, those kinds of things. So the top layer in any given location, it's going to be a different layer in given locations, but it's that last layer that hasn't eroded away yet. Once that layer erodes away, the next layer will be next, and it will eventually erode away unless something else is deposited on top of it. Does that make sense, Deviant?
Yeah. Yeah,
Okay.
I think so.
Thank you. I hope so. Okay, Logan, whenever you're ready.
Formed in 1 year during Noah's flood. There is no geologic column. It does not exist. All over the world, petrified trees are found standing up, connecting all the layers. How long does a tree stand around in Virginia before it falls down after it dies? A couple years. But petrified trees in the vertical position running through all these layers that you guys claim are different ages, they're common. There are thousands of them. Petrified trees that are standing up. There's no way to explain this with each layer being different ages. And I go through this in my seminar of number 4 about the lies in the textbooks. The geologic column does not exist anywhere in the world except the textbook. Somebody
Logan,
taught it to
can you pause it for
you
a second,
believed
please?
it. You should have been.
So I think I've covered this in maybe a couple different areas, but the conditions that lead to the formation of polystrate fossils, those upright trees, are actually really well understood. They're formed by rare evolution. Geologists don't think that those layers are millions of years old. So Kent immediately misrepresents what geologists have concluded about these fossils. They're formed by rare to infrequent brief episodes of rapid sedimentation, followed by periods of slow deposition. During the periods of slow deposition, the tree regenerates, grows up through the layer that was just laid down, and it keeps growing until that process happens again and there is a rapid sedimentation. The tree regenerates, grows upward, on and on. Trees can live to be dozens, hundreds of years. So you just add one layer after another. Many of these trees are found with very fine rootlets, which indicate that they're in place. They weren't moved there. And we've seen these kinds of burials today. We see this in the Mississippi River Delta, marshes, floodplains. Annual floods, volcanic eruptions can result in polystrate fossils. So creationists ignore the complex, delicate root systems that are found. They ignore the regenerative growth of the trees, and they ignore the fact that we see non-catastrophic local burial of trees today. Sorry, I had to just get that all out.
Good.
I had to get that out of my system. Thank you,
I'm glad
Logan.
you did.
I appreciate that.
Been more skeptical of that. Top layer's younger. Where did it come from? How can it possibly be younger? If you shuffle a deck of cards, is the top card younger? If I shake up these sand art toys and it makes 10 layers of sand in here, which it will do in minutes, are the layers different ages? No. They're all the same age. They're all in here at the same time. There is no geologic column. I'm sorry you fell for that, but there isn't any. Doesn't exist. All the layers formed in 1 year, Noah's flood, just by the tide going up and down and shuffling the water back and forth. It's going to make all the layers in 1 year. There is no geologic column. Go ahead.
Thank you, Kent. Skeptical
Logan.
guy, back to you. Go ahead.
Should we pause it for a second?
Yeah, so if we want to talk about where the layers.
So there was Kent's blanket denial again of the geologic column, and I don't know if he's touched the fossil record there or not, touched upon the fossil record or not, but just another example where he has to make a blanket denial because he doesn't want to face the volume of evidence out there. Why don't we listen? Do you want to listen to this, Deviant? Yeah, go ahead, Deviant.
Yeah, but I was just thinking because now that my brain just froze.
That's
One
okay.
second. Geologic column. The geologic column. That was the word. Isn't I
That's not what I heard. Okay. What about the geologic column?
That's not really what we deal with in archaeology per se. but we do stratigraphy.
Right.
And I mean, just looking at the different cultural layers that form over a couple of 100 years or over a couple of 1,000 years, I mean, it's the exact same process.
Right. Exactly.
So what Kent claims when he says there is no geologic column is a denial of when you dig. I mean, I could go out in the fields here. Okay, I couldn't dig that far because we actually have the bedrock. But on the other hand, you can see remnants from the Ice Age, the last Ice Age. That was
Nice.
10,000 years ago. 10,000 years ago, not 10 years ago or whatever.
4,000 years ago.
Exactly.
Heinrich Schliemann, right? He was the founder of the ruins in Troy,
Yeah.
or the discoverer of the ruins of Troy. How many layers did he find of cities that had been built on one another?
Right. Or this, what's it called in Turkey? Where they have found, not the temple that they have found, that's pre-settlement or pre bofasta.
That's the name of it?
Before people became farmers and settled in one area.
Right, like pre-Sumeria, pre-culture.
Exactly. Catalhöyük is one of these sites, and that's the temple, I believe, and the other one that's not that far away from there, where you see you literally see house on house on house on house on house.
Right.
Going hundreds of years back in just the part with the houses. I mean, the houses are already from the Neolithic era,
Right.
or
Neolithic
before that.
stoneworks, and then there's a Bronze Age place on top of it, or
Yeah, right. But according to, and as I said, if I go out here and dig, you can see, I wish I had them digitalized on my computer. It was so long ago, so old film from the digging I was doing in the Czech Republic of a Roman fortress, where you see really clearly these different layers before you come to where the Roman layers are. And that's 2,000 years we're talking about.
right.
That fortress was active in the 2nd century, around 120, 130 CE.
And no one would
doesn't exist.
argue that the lowest layers are more than likely the oldest layers,
Exactly.
and that each layer. So I don't see how they can argue that geology is any different when it's laying layers down through time. Like there are archaeological ruins built upon each other through time. It's no different.
Exactly. Sorry, maybe I went on a tangent there, but
No, that's good. That's good. Logan, whenever you're ready, please.
yes.
Came from. There are many answers. So you've got erosional processes, you've got animals dying and decaying. So that's usually where those are going to come from. However, we don't have to observe something directly to know it's true. So the math can help us calculate how we can radioactively date something, argon, carbon, whatever, and we can derive those numbers, those half-life equations, those.
Should we move on to Kent again?
The radioactive.
I mean, this guy's
constants.
just like, as far as I can tell,
just a little bit of knowledge of calculus and observation.
All of them are based on a decay of a certain element that is.
Okay. Thank you. Another skeptical guy. And Kent, we'll throw it back to you. Floor is yours.
All right. Well, thank you so much. I happen to love mathematics. I taught it for 15 years. It's called algebra, geometry, and trig, and I'll be glad to do the hard math with you if you would like. But I think you're missing the logic part that goes behind. Let's take carbon dating or potassium, argon, or rubidium, strontium, or lead-208, lead-206. All the dating methods, carbon-14, carbon-13, all of them are based on a decay of a certain element that is radioactive. I understand it pretty well. Let's take the logical part. If you walked into a room and there's a candle burning on a table, and I asked you the question, when was it lit? How long has it been burning? You say, I don't know, Kent. It was burning when I got here. Okay, this is your example with a rock that has a radioactive element in it. We dig it up. We test how much carbon-14, how much carbon-12. That is very accurate. I don't argue with that at all. We can walk in. We can measure this candle. Let's do some. It's called empirical science. Let's measure how tall it is. We get micrometers and measure it to the nearest of an inch and find out it's 7 inches tall. Nobody argues. Now we're going to measure something else, which we can measure. How fast is it burning? The rate of burn. We determine it's burning 1 inch per hour. So based on the hard math, we have a 7-inch candle. It is burning 1 inch an hour. When was it lit? You have no way to tell me unless you leave your hard math and go to some assumptions. How tall was it? We don't know.
So
has it always burned at the same rate? You can't possibly know that. You can dig up a rock and...
So we know that radiocarbon dating, like all radiometric dating, is rooted in the radioactive decay law, which is a law of physics. Nuclear decay is constant and does not vary in meaningful ways in nature. We also know that the rocks that are dated don't have daughter products when they're newly formed. And so any of the daughter product you're going to find there is a result of radiometric decay.
Right.
Deviant, if I'm saying something wrong there, please let me know.
Oh, no, not so far.
Good. But again, a blanket dismissal of Kent of all radiometric dating techniques, with some candle analogy that I don't really understand, nor do I really need to. No scientists are using the candle analogy in their scientific papers that they're doing. When they're dating archaeological ruins, are they using this candle technique?
Not on any digs I've been on, I can tell you that.
Were you trained in this in school?
Yeah, there were a lot of candles, a bunch of candles. I mean, I'm sorry. No, never, ever. And it's ridiculous. It's a ridiculous notion to, because what's at the bottom of this denial of Kent, not the denial of Kent, unfortunately we can't deny his existence. I wish we could, but we can't. At the bottom of it is the fact that if carbon dating, radiometric dating were so unreliable, there would be no use for it whatsoever. It would have no utility. And I know I've said this before, but hey, then again, so have Kent. So I'm not the only one repeating myself if that's the issue here.
I've heard Kent use, or maybe not Kent, but I've heard creationists use carbon-14 dating for things like the Dead Sea Scrolls and other religious artifacts to kind of prop up their dates that they have. But as soon as it goes beyond that 6,000 year time clock, it's 100% wrong.
Yeah.
And even though we've been able to calibrate this data by C14 in particular, by varves, which are lake sediments, and also by dendrochronology. So Kent has nothing to contradict the thousands, if not millions, of results of radiometric dating that have been done through time, and how they match wherever you are in the geologic column. I mean, you don't go from a date at the bottom of the Grand Canyon of 1,000 years ago to 3 million years ago to the very top is, 100 million years ago. It's just the opposite. You see the oldest layers at the bottom of the Grand Canyon, and you get dates successively younger as you get toward the top.
Exactly. It matches up, and it matches up with the other dating methods that were used prior to radiometric dating techniques.
Right.
So
Soot Kettle makes a good point here, Deviant. You can measure the molten material of the candle.
true.
Yeah,
True.
so you can make a measurement of that. Good point, Soot. Logan, how are you doing? He's gone for a break.
I thought you were going to say he's gone for a smoke. What?
Okay.
Good. Okay.
Good.
Do you want to keep going?
Yeah.
Okay.
Test how much carbon-14, how much carbon-12, uranium, potassium, argon, whatever one you want to use. That's correct. It's hard math, no question. We know how fast it's decaying today. We know how much is in it today. We do not know what it started with, and we don't know the decay rate's always been the same. And when they get wild dates that fall over the chart, they throw them out if they don't match the geologic column. So the geologic column, which does not exist, and you claim it does without any evidence, you claim it does, the geologic column is what determines whether their date is accepted or not. Radiometric dating would not have been feasible if the geologic column had not been erected first. Ever since, they said fossils have been and still are the best and most accurate method of dating and correlating the rocks. So they date the rock layers by what fossils they're found in them. You mentioned that.
Pause on
The
this,
layers are
please.
dated by the fossils, not by the but by carbon dating. He said apart from
BBM, take him down.
Actually, it's volcanic rocks that are most easily dated. So a lot of layers aren't dated from the fossils. They're dated because they fall in between volcanic layers, which can be dated, which gives an age range for that sedimentary layer that's in between the volcanic layers. So his whole thing of the fossils date the rocks, which date the fossils, circular argument nonsense, isn't real.
And again, if it was such an unreliable method, it wouldn't be used for anything.
Right. Mark's in the chat. Let's say hi to Mark Stoney.
Hi, Mark.
Our good friend.
Mark Stoney, the legend.
Gangster, whenever you're ready.
from very modern examples, I can think of no cases of radioactive decay being used to date fossils. This was 40 years ago. They still don't. They date the fossils by which layer they come from. They turn right around and date the layers by the fossils they find. I'll give you another logical conclusion since you're skeptical. If clams are generally found at the bottom of the logic column, and they are, and there is a column, but if they're found at the bottom, the logic from the atheist is, well, clams evolved first. There's a much more logical reason. Maybe clams are at the bottom because clams already live at the bottom. They're the first ones buried. Hello, if there's a worldwide flood like the Bible says, the clams would be buried first. Maybe birds are found on top because They're the last ones to drown in a flood. And they have
Wait.
hollow feathers and hollow bones, and they're going to float around. Maybe the animals are.
Is he claiming that the Earth was flat? I'm not talking about flat Earth, but without mountains and canyons and so on prior to the flood?
Yes. There was no. The mountain building occurred after the flood. He says Mount Everest rose 29,000 feet after the flood because of hydroplate theory. But so he's indicating that they're not tectonic movement and that the Earth was relatively flat prior to the flood, that the animals were herbivores, that there was an ice canopy, and other things that have no relation to reality.
Right.
Mark, I don't know the answer to your question. I'll have to look that up. And I don't really want to do it now because I'm kind of dealing with Kent at this point. I'll get back to you on that.
Sorted, a little bit sorted, based upon their density, based upon their habitat, where they live. Maybe you don't find squirrel fossils with kangaroo fossils because they don't live together, okay? Maybe you don't find polar bear fossils with camel fossils because they don't live together. Maybe they're sorted based upon their mobility.
Logan, can you?
It is not logical. I wish you would be skeptical of
yes, please.
So Kent's talking about biogeography here, and I've heard him say that the marsupials ended up back in Australia because people brought them back there as pets. So instead of the koala bears having to crawl from Mount Ararat through the eucalyptus forests of Asia and end up in Australia across the oceans, which weren't there, according to Kent, people might have brought them there as pets. And that explanation just defies belief. All of them. Well, we only needed 2, then they could breed themselves. But yeah, they had pet platypuses. What?
We don't have any kangaroos in Europe.
Well,
so they must have taken everyone.
They liked them down in Australia, so they took them back there.
Okay, yeah, I buy that.
I'm not kidding. That's his explanation of how marsupials got back to Australia. When we know, based on tectonic theory, that Australia and South America were connected at one point, and South America had a huge selection of marsupials in the past.
Yeah.
And the only living marsupial in North America is the possum.
Right. Possum power. Sorry.
What is that from?
I don't know. I just love possums.
So do I. I saw one of the Australian possums when I was down there in South Australia. And they were completely different from American possums, which I've also seen, but they were so cute. I mean, sometime I'll dig that up and I'll send it to you. It's the cutest little possum.
Oh, please do.
Okay, Logan.
Yeah.
What you've been taught. It is not logical to say that carbon dating, I'll go back to this one here, that means anything, because it's based on the assumption that this rate of decay can be known to always have been the same. They know there are things that affect the rate of radioactive decay. Here's a case where a lower leg of a mammoth was 15,000 years old, but the skin was 21,000 years old. Same animal. That was back in 1949. They're still getting wild numbers. Living mollusk shells dated at 2,300 years old. They're still alive. If it supports our theories, we put it in the text. If it doesn't support it, we put it in the footnote.
Did you say that was in 1949?
Right.
Because, yeah, I believe it was 1950 that they, what's the word? not cataloged. Do you have any idea what I'm getting at, BBM?
I'm trying to understand. From what I understand, they got two different dates. Kent claims on one mammoth, but I thought Aaron Raw covered this and kind of debunked Kent on this, that it was from actually two different mammoths that were found. But I don't know enough about it that I know that for a fact. But even, I mean, those dates aren't that far off anyway. Geologically speaking, wasn't it like, what were the dates? Like 10,000 and 20,000 or something?
Yeah.
That's nothing. I mean, in the big scheme of things, that's nothing. I mean, in archaeology, that would be something, but in geology, it's like, you know. He talked about, oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No. Go on.
Well, he talked about dating of mollusk shells, and this is well known by scientists. Dating living mollusk shells as being thousands of years old. The error is due to unique chemical reactions that add dead carbon into younger samples, which give false older ages. So this is well known by scientists. Kent isn't revealing this. This was found by scientists. And Kent thinks it's a gotcha, but it's not.
Yeah. So in 1949 was the year that Libby presented his work with C14 dating. He developed it during the. I'm reading on the internet now because my brain wouldn't allow me to get in depth. I still can't find the word the word I'm looking for is basically, these are my simple words now, making a chart of the decay rate of C14 or the isotopes, which led to his him receiving the Nobel Prize in 1960 in chemistry.
Okay. And so, when was that? So what was in 1949?
That's when the chart of it's not called a chart. Again, it's not called a chart. It's called something else. How the rate of decay of this isotope, which made it possible to start dating. So if this example that he said was from 1949, and I know this was presented, I'm pretty sure it was in the end of, like, in November, somewhere on my, maybe not on the, maybe on this computer, I have the paper, the article where he presented this. And I'm pretty sure it was in November of 1949. And the work then proceeded into 1950. So if this was in 1949, that in and of itself tells me that there could have been anomalies in the results because of how the baby state of the technology. For example, there could also be other issues there. But at the end of the day, it kind of all falls back on this idea that anyone would use such an unreliable method for anything, which is absurd.
Right. I have something. Is this the
calibration curve?
Calibration curve, right?
Yes,
right.
There's the word.
also like a decay graph, I think, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So is Kent talking about the Velocevich mammoth? So
Could be.
from what I understand, widely different, this is the creationist claim, widely different radiocarbon dates are obtained from the same frozen mammoths. Different parts of the Velocevich mammoth date to 29,500 and 44,000 years before present. One part of Dima, a frozen baby mammoth, was 40,000, another part 26,000, and wood immediately around it was 9 to 10,000 years before present. Two parts of the Fairbanks Creek mammoth date to 15,380 and 21,330 before present. And so the answer is the dates come from different mammoths. The reference cited by Brown and cribbed by Hovind likely refers only to the Fairbanks mammoth, which Brown also mentions. The 15,380 and 21,300 before present dates come from separate mammoths. And it's noted that the 21,300 date is invalid because it comes from a hide soaked in glycerin. It is uncertain what Brown's source for the 29,500 and 44,000 dates. So that's the note I found about that.
And you're right. Aronrod did a debunk of.
Lies in the textbooks. He debunked it, I think.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
How much more do you think we have here?
Every time Kent starts to talk, my brain goes into some kind of zombie mode, and there's.
Well, we were streaming for like 3 or 4 hours earlier, and it's like, oh my gosh!
Right.
You weren't there, right, today?
No, I missed
Okay.
it. I was sleeping again.
It's okay. Good. That's better. Logan, whenever you're ready.
Freshly killed seal, carbon dated 1,300 years old. It doesn't work. It's based on wild assumptions. And I can go for 2 hours on this. Tell you what, Charles, I will send you my video number 7 if you'd like it, where I give all the examples of this. It's imagination. It's dream work. Hard math would tell us the hard math is going to fail when you get to the point where you can no longer observe. You have to make assumptions. How old is it? Well, let's assume it's billions of years old. If you want to talk about the age of the Earth, I've got all kinds of hard math ways to prove to you it cannot be billions of years old. I'll be glad to share those if you'd like. But you're claiming we have evidence from evolution from Grand Canyon. We'll cover that next time. I'm out of time. Grand Canyon probably formed in 1 week. It's a washed out dam. It has many, many layers. That's true. And those layers all formed in 1 year. And then if you closed up Grand Canyon today, a giant lake would back up behind it called Grand Lake. Look at the elevation lines. It would come back to Colorado.
Logan?
Be trillions of gallons of water.
So there was a freshly killed seal, carbon 14 dated at 1,300 years old. This is the well-known reservoir effect that occurs also with mollusks and other animals that live in the water. It happens when old carbon's introduced into the water. In the above case of the seal, old carbon dioxide is present within deep ocean bottom water that has been circulating through the ocean for thousands of years before upwelling along the Antarctic coast. The seals feed off the animals that live in a nutrient-rich upwelling zone. The water that is upwelling has been traveling along the bottom for a few thousand years before surfacing. The carbon dioxide in it came from the atmosphere before the water sank. Thus, the carbon in the seawater is a couple thousands of years old from when it was in the atmosphere. It keeps going on and on, but you kind of get the picture there.
Yeah.
Water backed up in Grand Lake if you just simply plugged up the canyon. I'll get yours ready for that. You go ahead with your next evidence.
Skeptical guy, go ahead. Take as much time as you need to respond.
I was wondering if I could just ask Kent a question actually about the flood claims.
Sure. Yeah.
So the Bible talks about the global flood, and if my biblical knowledge is correct, the ark crashed into Mount Ararat of I'll let one of you guys correct me if I'm wrong on that, but I think that's correct. Some mountain in the Middle East or some hill or whatever. And there are kangaroos on there. But kangaroos are only indigenous to Australia. How did the kangaroos get there?
Here we go.
We don't see any kangaroos, any dead ones on that trip. We can say that there's a land bridge, a mini land bridge, but we don't see skeletons of kangaroos there that would be able to make that journey.
He's going to bring up the land bridges.
Donnie, is it my turn?
Yes, feel free to respond.
Sure.
Yeah, I should have said it.
Boy, I've got 50 or 60,000 slides. If you would ask the questions in the same order I've got the answers, it'd be a lot easier. But the animals got off the ark. The Bible says it landed in the mountains of Ararat, and then they would disperse from there. If you look at the globe, and I've got pictures of all this on my video number 6. I can't find my slides quickly enough, but people say, do you think the continents were ever connected? I say they're still connected right now. All the continents are connected right this minute. Some of the places are underwater, but they're still connected. If you took all the water off the planet, you'd see there's dirt underneath everywhere. Okay?
But they're separated by water.
Well, yeah. But between Australia and Vietnam, if you Google, just look at the continental shelf. The water in here is about 40 feet deep. If you lowered the oceans at 200 feet, everything would be connected. The English Channel is, 30 miles wide between England and France, and only about 100 feet deep from here to the back door. If you lowered the oceans a few hundred feet and froze all that water, if you made the ice caps bigger, which we know they were bigger, there's evidence clear down to Kansas City.
Can you pause it,
there was
please?
ice age.
Okay.
If the ice caps were...
So he's going off on a tangent here. What does Britain and France have to do with Australia? And why aren't marsupials found in the rainforests of Indonesia or any of those areas, Vietnam? If they had to travel through that area to get to Australia. So anyway, I guess we'll let Kent continue unless Deviant has something, but this is just like ridiculous.
I agree. No, there's really not much to say. It feels very much like a diversion or confusion.
He's going to mention the Ice Age went down to Kansas City. It has nothing to do with Australia. I mean, it might say that there was a land bridge, but from what I understand, there is a deep area where there is a kind of a defining line that goes through that area. I don't know if it's Indonesia or New Guinea or what have you in that area, but I don't think this land bridge thing is completely true. But again, where are the marsupials in Southeast Asia?
Exactly. And this won't answer.
Right.
I can't see how he could get there from this end of the argument.
bigger, that makes the oceans smaller. That makes the continents larger. And the animals could walk anywhere. Between Russia and Alaska, the Bering Strait, it's 60 miles wide, only about 100 feet deep. The oceans average 12,000 feet, average. Lowering the oceans 200 feet and freezing that water, sticking it on the North and South Pole, larger ice caps, shrink the oceans, enlarge the continents. I think the ice caps were huge at the end of the flood. I cover in my video series where the ice age fits right into the beginning of the flood. When they got off the ark, they could walk anywhere. You could
But
walk
wouldn't
anywhere.
we expect to find fossils, bones of kangaroos at making that journey?
Fossils don't form today. How many animals died in the last 50 years? How many animals died in the last 5 years? Colonel Sanders killed millions of them to make chicken sandwiches.
So the same processes that formed fossils in the past are still going on today. There's still beaches with dead organisms buried, lakes, streams, rivers, sand dunes, even volcanic layers. The processes are no different. It takes longer than 15 years or 10 years or whatever Kent was saying for a fossil to form. There has to be permineralization and it's a slow process, but fossils are forming today all over the world in almost every sedimentary environment out there. So it's a ridiculous
Right.
statement by Kent.
Right.
which is out of them. So none of them fossilized. Animals aren't fossilizing today. Show me an example where we find mass graveyards of fossils. There's no
been
question
enough time for them to lithify.
Fossils don't form at all unless they're buried quickly under the right conditions. I think Noah's flood probably made nearly all of the fossils in the world in 1 year. Fossils aren't forming today. Show me where they're forming. There are herds of elephants, mammoths that are found fossilized. Thousands and thousands of mammoths.
How could you ever show something fossilizing when it's a slow process?
It
It's
would
the
be in a
same-
state of
Yeah,
partial fossilization, which is
or
found,
even partial
you know.
decay.
Right.
You-
He also doesn't take into account that creatures can die in anoxic environments where oxygen isn't rich, and so they decay much more slowly.
right, like bog.
Exactly.
Bog bodies.
And yeah, exactly. The bog people.
Yeah.
Where were they? In Denmark or?
Mostly in Denmark. We have some here as well, but most of them have been found in Denmark. Others in southern Sweden, like Skåne, the very southernmost part of Sweden, which only has to do with the geography, the prevalence of bogs.
Right.
We could have them here.
That's another topic we'll cover someday because that's a fascinating topic.
Oh, I love it. It's wonderful, but not today.
My dad had a book called The Bog People, Schnaubel Man, and all these. I don't know what some of the other ones were named, but it was fascinating, and how some of them were ritualistically killed with ropes and that kind of thing.
Exactly what I was going to say. Oh, if you only knew the significance of bogs in ancient northern mythology and
wow.
Oh my goodness, it's incredible, fascinating, immensely fascinating. Oh,
right. We better move back to Kent before we.
Yeah, do it. I was happy.
Giant mammoth graveyards.
So you don't expect those bones to lithify and become fossils?
Animals die.
Why would that? How? Yeah. So my question with that is, why would that not be the case? When we find bones, we see them fossilized. Why would we expect a different process to happen? Why would we expect it not to happen now? Why would we expect something that happened in the past to not carry to the future? As in, another example of this is the half-life. Why would we expect that to change? In your candle demonstration, why would we expect the rate of the candle to change? There's no evidence that it changes.
One question at a time. Okay. Animals die today by the millions. They are scavenged. The animals drag the carcasses all over the place to find fully articulated skeletons, all the bones still together. Thousands of dinosaurs are found buried in the drowning position with their neck arched back like they're trying to get one more breath. Their neck is up. All the bones are still together.
Pause.
If they had died and just laid there for even.
So this is not a drowning position.
It's dying.
Yeah, exactly. They are dying. It's what happens in many cases post-mortem during
rigor mortis.
Exactly. After they have died, the tissue not thickens. What's the word? Becomes stiff. in lack of better word.
Yeah, the structure of the
Of the
organism,
muscular,
of the
the muscular tissue.
right. Tenses.
Tenses. Thank you. Why won't my brain work today? Dang it! I
Stevie,
blame
you
Ken.
speak several languages, so you forget a word in one of the languages you speak. It's most of us can't even speak our own language. So anyway, I'm sorry. What were you saying?
No, so my point is that it's not true that this is a sign of asphyxiation.
Right.
This happens when after death. It may look like what we imagine it would look like if they were about to asphyxiate, but that's not the case.
To go from that to they choked on global flood mud. That's a pretty big step to take. And also that there was a God that created this global flood, only 4,000 years ago. The steps you have to take to put the mud in that dinosaur's mouth are
Right.
astronomical.
Right. And again, that's not why they look the way they do. So, but even if it was, the leaps you have to, I mean, one giant step for mankind, I don't know.
One giant step for Kent's brain. One small leap for mankind.
True.
Gangster, whenever you're ready, please.
A week, they would have been scavenged. The buzzards would have picked people off, picked bones off. They wouldn't be articulated skeletons. There are millions of fully articulated skeletons. They had to be buried alive or buried quickly after death and preserved from scavenging. Animals today die and they're scavenged, and the bones themselves rot. We dumped a bunch of cow bones off here in our part of our tour, 2 years ago? They're already decaying badly. They'll be gone in 3 years. They'll turn to dust. And fossils don't form unless they're buried quickly. Noah's flood is the best explanation. But you're missing a bigger picture here. I'm not demanding that all the taxpayers pay for my religion. I believe Noah's flood is true, but I'm not demanding that be taught in public schools.
Logan, when you get a chance,
you guys
please.
believe.
So the cows on Dinosaur Adventure Land, since they don't, they decay or the scavengers have taken them off, that's proof that you don't get that sort of articulated fossils form. And it's like, has Kent ever seen like rivers in the springtime, how destructive they are and how much sediment they're moving around, and how animals die and can be quickly buried in a river situation, let alone at a beach? In any water environment, conditions can change and you can get spring flood conditions, monsoonal conditions in the summer or what have you. But there are so many instances where animals can die and then get quickly buried. And I don't know why it really takes that much of an imagination to even think of those things. I mean, we see them occurring naturally every day. Go ahead.
You can't really compare what he's talking about is an urban area.
Yeah, it's not an urban area, but it's an area that's where it's a man-influenced area.
That's what I meant.
Yes, I agree with that. That's true.
It's not New York, but
No. I've been there. It's not New York. I've been to both of those places. It's not New York City. It's an old quarry. I mean, there's like major patches of exposed gravel, and there's no real, as far as I could see, there's no real streams or anything. It's all kind of a bunch of lakes that are in various forms of stagnation. But not that it's saying it's not a bad, it's got it's kind of a nice open space, and there's some nice trees and stuff. So it's not a bad place. And there's certainly animals and plants that live there and make it home, but it's not really a wilderness or a good example of a natural environment, I would say, or a wild environment, better said.
Exactly. I mean, if you would go out into the desert, any desert really, the animals that die there, sure, some of them are scavenged, but then again, if there is a wind, those animals can be buried very quickly, and they can
Right.
also be unburied quickly. But it's
True.
a total misrepresentation to say that today they are always carried off and scavenged and spread all over the place. That's not
It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
Logan, whenever you're ready.
I
How
believe
long
the
should
kangaroos are related to
Logan,
mosquitoes,
can you pause
and
that
you
for
demand
1
that be taught
second?
in public
Again,
schools at
please.
taxpayer expense.
I'm sorry. How long, Deviant? I mean, this is going to go on for a long time.
Yeah, I'm starting to realize that.
Should we just stick it to 2 hours and kind of? My voice is a little hoarse from New Year's, and so in fact, I kind of had laryngitis yesterday morning because I was singing so much. Not just like singing for the group, but we were just all singing songs from like the 70s and 80s. So
You had a grand
I don't
time.
know why I brought that. That's not really I just don't want to talk that much more.
I fully
Logan,
understand.
Well, if you don't mind, Logan, can we keep it like 2 hours?
Okay. You want me?
And then if you want to bring somebody else on, but I don't know if I'm going to like really chat too much with people because my voice is kind of going. But anyway, let's hear what Ken has to say.
Yeah.
We're all paying for your religion. I resent that. I'm going to fight that till I die. If you want to believe in evolution, you want to think kangaroos and mosquitoes are related, you believe whatever you want. But don't call it science, and don't put it in the public school textbooks. It's not science. It's a religion. You believe in that stuff. These family trees you guys teach are pure propaganda.
So people
science
who are
backing it up.
Christian and believe in evolution have two religions, or does one discount the other?
Well, people can believe all sorts of things they want. People can believe crazy things, okay? You can be a Christian and believe in God and still believe some of the dumb things you were taught. Sure. That's why I'm here. I'm here to straighten you out, okay?
So
pause it
with
for
your
1 second,
castle
Logan.
bone,
Yeah, he shows these family trees that are obviously from either children's or high school textbooks, but they're not phylogenetic trees. They're, how many millions of species are there? And yet he's showing these charts that have reduced them down to 20 types of animal or whatever, which kind of plays into his narrative of kinds. But they're not what is being taught in genetics universities, in universities all over the world, I might add. There's no big conspiracy in any one country against creationism in favor of evolution. It's science. And these simple family trees that he shows are just ridiculous, especially the one that was shown right before this. But anyway, that's all I had to say.
And even when these trees are used, they're only used to give an idea of what we are talking about. I mean, even though my I don't remember much from my biology lessons, mainly because my teacher was more interested in something else that we won't bring up here.
What?
Well, he
Your
had
professor?
he had a very. I had him in math, chemistry, and biology, and he definitely had an interest in a particular subject.
Okay.
Let's just say it had to do with reproduction.
Oh my gosh.
Oh yes.
Okay. Was it like Hovind?
Kind
I
of,
mean,
but more human.
okay, like the real thing.
Yeah.
Okay.
So he managed to get it in there. Sorry for the choice of
Okay.
words.
Okay. That's all
in
right.
all the
That's all right.
subjects. So
Okay.
even in maths. Oh yes, even in maths. So I can't say my education when it comes to evolution was maybe the most in depth, but
Yeah.
I still know that those illustrations were only used as a visual aid to
Right.
the rest. It's not like we were presented with these illustrations and that's it. Like, this is how it looks. Okay, go home. We're finished with the lesson. No, it's to explain what we are talking about and use it to go deeper into the subject. But of course, that doesn't suit Kent and his narrative.
And usually when you see those things, it's usually like just illustrating like the ape family or the cat family.
Right.
Or it's not used to go from a prokaryote to a whale on one branch, to an ape on another branch, to a duck on another branch. I mean, that's a ridiculous, and that's the ones that he shows actually.
Right.
Logan, you want to keep going, please?
Demonstration. Have you tried exposing them to heat and pressure and see what happens to the fossil? What happens to the bones for a long period of time?
We know fossils can't. We know animals petrification can take place in a few years under heat and pressure, like you said. Would that mean they'd have to be buried deeply underground to get the pressure of all the weight above them to get that heat and pressure? Would that be something like Noah's flood would do? Bury them under hundreds of feet of sediment?
Yeah,
Animals that die today don't get that. They don't get buried under hundreds of feet of sediment. We don't see fossils forming today anywhere.
It would still take longer than a year.
No. Google, how long does it take to petrify a bone? I know it's been done.
Fossilize.
Okay, fossilized, similar thing. A bone can be petrified, turned to stone, I think in less than a year, under heat and pressure. But you're not going to get that when it dies and lays on top of the ground. You're going to get scavenged. It's going to be dragged all over the place. They're going to chew the bones up.
So I do want to go back to the thing you said about the dinosaurs, arching their heads, gasping for breath. Do we see that in all fossils that are found? Or only some? Because if there's a worldwide flood, I would expect it to be all. And if it's not all, then something is very weird, or that dinosaur just died before that.
Okay, well, I hope you're still skeptical of what you believe also. If there was a worldwide flood, billions of animals would be buried, and some would end up on top. The ones on top are likely to be scavenged. The ones that are buried are likely to fossilize. I think you'll find a mixture of both because of Noah's flood. To say that the Noah's flood is invalid because some of the bones are not still articulated it's not logical reasoning.
No, it is. When you try to drown animals, no one.
I couldn't understand a word of that.
I said, if you try to drown animals, you would expect them to all try to gasp for breath, would you not?
Well, they might have died for various reasons before. They didn't all die by drowning. The Bible says the fountains of the deep broke open. There might have been volcanic activity burying them in hot ash. I'll watch the video when I get to heaven and find out what happened exactly.
Bury them in hot ash, and then.
Can you pause it, please, Logan?
The hot ash.
I'll watch the video of it when I get to heaven.
Right.
Well, no, we'll look at the geologic evidence, Kent. We'll look at the actual evidence. We don't need to watch a film of it later. We already know the basic story and how, if you go from location to location, all those stories fit together into one history, this history of planet Earth. And Kent always starts sentences with, well, if the flood happened, prove, give us some evidence that the flood happened. Here you are nitpicking evolution again for the umpteenth time. Where is your evidence for Noah's Ark, for special creation, for all those events in Genesis? You don't have any, and your comeback is, well, I don't pay to have those taught in public school, or whatever he says there. But he just thinks that that's a go-to answer, and then he doesn't have to deal with it anymore. So, Deviant, do you have anything there?
No.
Okay.
Would have been
Actually, Kent, before you answer that, I want to pause just for 10 seconds. Skeptical guy, can you do me a favor and click the settings button
Should we
right next to it's right on the
should we
StreamYard,
maybe
right next to
pause
where
it
it says
here and
present?
Yeah.
I mean, as I said, this is going to go on for probably
Yeah. I
2 or
mean,
3 hours of real time, and I don't know how long we're
exactly.
through it, but I think we've covered a lot of stuff.
I agree.
And
And if you look at oh, sorry.
are you good with Deviant?
Yeah.
With what we've done so far?
Yeah. I think we've. I mean, we more or less know what Kent's standard arguments are. And
Should we
I
go
feel
ahead and
as
just go to an open panel at this point and end this video? And the Kent part of the video?
right.
And if Lupin wants to come in, he can come in, or whoever.
Yeah.
Ghost, what do you
It's up.
think?
Yeah.
Oh, sounds good to you?
Yeah.
Is
Awesome.
Lupin want to come in, or did he
Yeah.
leave? Okay. He can come in.
Good evening.
Hi, Lupin. Good evening.
Hi.
Hey, Gangster Ghost. Hi, Deviant. I didn't get a
Hi.
chance to wish you a Happy New Year's.
No, Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Possibly, maybe even a Merry Christmas.
Yes.
All right.
So
Happy Christmas.
happy holidays, all encompassed in one.
Yes.
Right.
And to you.
How are you doing, Lupin?
Oh, God is great. Wonderful. Spectacular.
Is Lupin a little quiet, do you think, Deviant?
Yeah. Yeah.
Can you
I have a bit
can you
hard
turn
to
up just a
hear
little
you.
bit, Lupin?
Can y'all turn me up?
Logan, can you turn Lupin up, do you think? Or
I did.
I never thought
He's-
I'd hear myself say those words, but
Yeah, right.
I'm kidding, Lupin. I'm
Does
kidding.
it sound? It's okay. I'm used to your jokes. I know you.
I think you're better. I think
Let
you're
me
doing
see.
better.
I mean,
That's better.
Yeah. So what you?
What'd you
guys
think of the
been,
debate? Or
I
not?
mean,
Yeah.
I haven't really watched it, but of course I'm gonna take Kent's side. I'm pretty sure that he has made more than enough positive claims to prove that evolution is false. I've heard this guy talk about the mosquitoes that have been nuked and microwaved, radiized, everything like that. It's still a fly. The geologic column is not necessarily falsifiable, but it's not a it's a made up term. It's a made up term. And I don't know. I'm almost 99% sure or 100% sure that Ken Hovind has held his ground very well, but I wasn't able to join you guys during the middle of the debate, so I don't have much to go on.
Well, if you do a kind of a debate analysis like that, it's usually kind of a one side looking at the other side, and Kent is the other side. So
Well,
if you
that's
were to
why.
if you were to do it per se, you know, if you and like Dustin were reviewing a evolution video, then I wouldn't expect to have us on there because it would take too much time of us really discussing and kind of arguing with each other. So
Right.
that's why I think this format, I mean, if you watch Atheist Junior or other channels, it's kind of like two quote unquote evolutionists will watch Kent Hovind or Ken Ham or somebody else. So it's like, it's nothing personal. It's just kind of how it's done.
I feel
Yeah.
like there is some personal bias behind it, but I'm not here to argue that near here nor there. Gangster Ghost, how have you felt about the debate?
Oh, it's all right.
Do you see who based on I mean if it's still going, you guys want to keep playing it?
No.
I'm kind of talked out, Lupin, at
Yeah.
this point. I mean, if you want to have a little discussion amongst ourselves, but they were kind of pausing, and it's going to go on for a long time, and we're kind of already at the 1 hour 45 mark. But if you want to talk about some things, you know, if you want to run the video and then have Lupin make remarks, we could do that too. I mean, and that doesn't even require us being here, right, Deviant?
No.
I mean, Logan, if you're okay with that, we'll have Lupin make comments on the video and he can have the floor basically. But it's up to you. What do you think about that, Lupin?
It doesn't matter. I don't want to feel like the only creationist here and not have any opposition. Are you guys saying that you guys want to leave?
Well, I mean, I
tell
can
me
hang
straight up.
around for a little bit. I just didn't want to watch the video anymore. I'm kind of sick of like analyzing Kent's arguments at this point. But I would talk to you, you know,
How about this? Can we do 10 minutes of the video and then we'll shut it down on the video?
Okay, that sounds good. Let's do
That
that.
sounds fair to you?
Sure.
Yeah.
All right, let's just
Sounds
go
good.
and play. And if you have a moment where you feel like you need to pause, or if I say I need to pause, please just say, hey, pause. Let's talk about this, and then we could discuss it. And
Sure.
I'll hear your point of view, and you can hear mine, and we can see how it meshes.
Let's do it.
All right.
Yes, I can.
Click the settings, go into the audio. I notice you got that nice
you-
headset. So I
can-
want to
can-
make
can
sure
you
that
hit
the audio is coming
maximize?
through the head.
Can you hit the maximize button on the bottom right of the video controls? The big square box. Gigi Gangster, you
Is it
controlling
right
this?
above the word another?
Yes.
Logan, do you know what he's talking about?
If not, he could just hit play and then we could just deal with it.
Okay.
Okay.
Logan, if you want to just hit play, you can do that.
Yeah, boy, man, you guys have made me bust out the old Nikolai, my good friend Nikolai from Russia.
What is that?
I've had a couple drinks to tolerate with you guys. It's the only way to maintain my sanity.
You're just hearing so much wrong that you're ready to explode.
I mean, judge me as you will. I mean, I'm sure that they'll take this clip. Oh, Lupin drank some vodka and Red Bull, and he's such a bad Christian.
Well,
I don't think anybody's going to say that.
no, it would be.
I don't think we're
Why?
Logan. Logan, are you there?
Yeah, I'm
Do
here.
you want to do you want to press the play button? I think
I
we're
want
yeah.
full screen and
Oh,
try to
oh,
get
you
off
tried?
it.
The full
Okay.
screen, full screen button is right above another, and it has that little box with the 4 squares. Or with the
Lower
four-
right corner. You couldn't do it? If not, just go ahead and play it again if you can do that, or is it locked up?
Yeah, you could just hit play.
I tried to. It's kind of locked up.
Oh gosh.
Try
Well,
and try and hit the refresh button.
Refresh.
Would you like me to take control of this? I can do this without playing any Andrew Tate videos or any.
Can you really?
Yeah, I can. I can. Trust me. I respect.
you're kind of
Logan.
liquored up right now.
I mean, trust me. I could down.
I'm just
three-
teasing.
Don't. Well, don't. We don't want to see you down a whole bunch of drinks.
Oh, well.
That's not good for you. It
Why
looks like
isn't it-
I mean, it looks like the chat's going, but
I'll be right to you.
oh, here we go. Okay. Try it again.
What happened here?
We're
Well,
gonna
we're
go
out.
try. We're gonna try to put the video on again.
Set.
Okay.
Can you
You know
click
what?
the?
There we go.
Probably doing my camera.
I think it
Yes, it
sounds like
is.
it.
Is that better?
Yes, a lot better, and I think that's going to help.
Both your viewers and to you, Kent, and to you, Donnie.
No worries. It happens frequently, actually. So that should reduce any echo or anything like that. Your mic just evolved. So if you can you reiterate your last point in question, and then we'll throw it back to Kent to respond?
Yeah. So my question was, Kent, you mentioned them being buried in ash, but then since the flood happened so quickly, wouldn't all the ash have been washed away by the flood, or is it some special ash that doesn't get washed away by water?
No, the ash wouldn't have been washed away.
Okay, I think during Noah's flood,
Oh, you saying anything?
I just said no, the ash wouldn't have been washed away, but continue.
Okay.
there'd be a variety of things happening at the same time. I think there are volcanoes going off right this minute. Right this minute, there are probably, 200 volcanoes right now going off someplace in the world, and they're producing ash clouds that are settling within an effective radius of that volcano. Sometimes they go for miles, sometimes they go for, not very far. And so the animals that are buried near those volcanoes will be buried in ash, but 20 miles away, they won't be buried in ash. How can you not get it? Part of the world, the whole world was flooded, and there's volcanic activity at the same time. At the same time, there's underwater mudslides happening because the crust of the earth is broken up. The flood would do all kinds of things. A worldwide flood would be catastrophic over the earth. Some would be buried.
Well, if you have volcanoes going off underneath the ocean, how would there be ash clouds, and how would ash get 20 miles, like he was saying? I mean, the whole world's covered with water. All you would be getting is lava flows and maybe mud flows and that kind of thing. But
may I respond to your
Yeah.
question? So if there's volcanic activity hiding under the water, the pressure can be so great where it could push the ash flow above the water surface and cause clouds of ash to appear.
right, but how would that ash then encompass animals and create animals trapped in the ash flows or trees? If the whole, I can acknowledge that that's possible. What you just said, that there's so much pressure that the ash goes into the air, but then all it's going is into the air, back into the ocean, because the whole world's covered with water. There isn't, do you know what I mean? The whole world's covered with water. If there's ash coming out of a volcano, then it's going to settle in the water. It's not going to cover land, trees, any animals that happen to be in the path of that ash fall.
Well, if that ash falls upon land, then yes, it could cover animals that are on land. I don't want to be here with Ayden. I'm sorry.
Aw. Bye, Lupin.
Ayden will take his turn, Lupin. Let's keep kind of doing what we're doing.
I didn't even say anything. I'm just
This
gonna.
is
I'll
okay.
I'll keep myself muted. I'll be this sword of Damocles that hangs over his head. I won't even say anything.
I've seen the disrespect earlier to Stump, and that was quite an event here. That left a very big impact on.
Well,
on a few of
let's
us.
not change the subject then.
Right.
Let's
You
play
can
some more
continue
of the
on this.
video.
I'll be right back. I'll let Ayden talk while I go and.
No, I won't even say anything. You go ahead.
No. I'm gonna go and refill a drink, and I'll be right back.
Okay.
All right. Well, hello everyone.
Hi, Ayden.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm all right, thanks. And yourself?
Good, good. So
That's
we
good.
reviewed a lot of the Kent Hovind video, though I don't know if we scratched the surface or not, but we had a good time doing it.
that's
And
good.
So Lupin came on, and I was just kind of getting burnt out of Hovind at that point, but we agreed to kind of go over some more of the video with him here so he could give some of his opinions of whatever Kent's talking about now, which is
That's good.
ash flows, I think.
It's good to get both sides of the discussion represented. I'd never not supported that, so I'm glad
guess
that
let's
Lupin
play
decided
some-
to come on.
Yeah, welcome aboard. Let's play some more video. And Ayden, if you want to stop the video at some point, just let Logan know, please.
Sure.
And drowned in water. Some would drown and float and end up getting scavenged. Some would drown and get buried and end up getting fossilized.
Get scavenged by what? If all of the other creatures are underwater.
Well, bacteria are still going to be around. Bacteria weren't involved in this. Bacteria certainly scavenge all the carcasses that landed. And insects aren't mentioned as going onto Noah's Ark. They could survive on floating log mats. But you're going off track here. We're not here to defend Noah's flood. The title of the debate was, is there evidence for evolution?
Not
And
is
your
there
only
evidence
counter
like
to the
Logan?
evolution is Noah's flood.
So insects can survive on floating log mats, but apparently monkeys cannot survive on log mats. I guess we've learned that today.
Yeah, that and never mind the countless plant species that would be totally wiped out without any sort of trace because they wouldn't be able to survive being totally submerged in water for either 40 days or for 11 months straight. So, I mean, even if you have some bugs that were able to make it on some flotation device, I guess the one that he gave in this example was some sort of like tree stump or something like that was what he said. But was it the specific terminology he used?
I'm not sure.
So, I mean, if there are some insects that survived via that method, I'm sure that we could account for some insect species. But to be able to say that there were sufficient amounts for every single one of the insects that we find in taxonomy today, I would say is just a little bit of a stretch.
By the way, can you hear me?
We can,
Yeah.
yes. Hello.
Okay, Ayden, did you ever catch my response to your question on why we see so many species today over 6,000 years?
Oh, you provided an answer to that somewhere else? If you did, then I did not see it. No, I did not.
Oh, okay. The answer was I was only thinking about the animals that were on the ark. I did not think about the species of fish, and I also did not think about the species of insects. To that point, that would add a much larger number than just the animals on the ark.
Right, so you'd have to account for every single one of the insect species we find in taxonomy today being able to survive via the method that Kent was talking about. And you would also have to account for the fact that exclusively land-dwelling species actually make up the majority of all taxonomical species that we find on the planet today. They don't make up the minority. It's actually water-dwelling species that make up the minority of all of the biodiversity that we find on this planet.
So with what you just said, that there's a water species that will make up the majority, that would
Minority.
Or you said majority.
I said no. Water species make up the minority of all of the species that we find on the Earth. Land-dwelling species, exclusively land-dwelling species, make up the majority of all of the species that we find on this Earth in taxonomy.
I don't know how true that is. But if you include insects, if you include animals that intake oxygen due to sphericals in their on their body, um, if you include the fish, um, then the animals on the ark, that would give you a much closer number to what you were saying. And I was not including those types of creatures. I was just including the creatures that were on the ark.
Okay, well, I just found, and I can link it in the private chat, but there's a Science Daily article here that says that a staggering 80% of all taxonomical species on Earth are land dwelling, with another 15% being ocean dwelling, and a further 5% being in freshwater. So I'll link that to you right now in the private chat.
Okay. All I will say is I don't feel like there's any issue with the flood and the amount of animals that are on the planet today.
Okay, well, that's it's.
Don't
Oh,
see any
so you weren't
problem.
done. You weren't done. I'm sorry. Go ahead. You
Don't
weren't
don't see any
finished.
problem.
Okay. Well, I'm glad to hear from your perspective. And if you don't see any problem with it personally, then that's perfectly fine. My only rebuttal to what you had said earlier would be to highlight once again that it's 80% of all of the species that we find on this planet lived on land. So you would have to account for several millions of species that are all independent of one another, that are all not reproductive of any other kind of organism, as Kent Hovind himself actually stressed in one of the videos that was played on this stream not too long ago. One must take after its own kind. So I think the amount of biodiversity that you will see that are exclusively land dwelling compared to the amount of species that would be able to fit on a boat as described in the Bible as far as dimensions are concerned, those two things will not correlate with one another. So to me, when I look at something like that and I find those two things, I personally find that that's indicative of a mythological narrative. That's my personal opinion, obviously. I'm not saying that's the actual fact of the matter because I don't know.
That's
But to
fine.
me, that's an ancient story that, while it may actually have a grain of truth, in my opinion, it's a recounting of the huge localized flooding that we would have seen in places like Mesopotamia and the Levant during the last ice age. I think that it's not indicative of the entire world being full of water as is described in the scripture. But that's my view personally.
Could I say something here, please?
Sure. And then I would like to add something after.
Okay. I just want to make the point that we are starting with one side is starting with the flood narrative almost as a fact, and
We have
working the
evidence
Earth's
for it.
wait a minute, working the Earth's current biodiversity into that quote unquote fact that is mentioned in the Bible. I would mention that's just one creation or one flood event. There are hundreds, they're all different, they have different characters. Um, and we're starting with that, whereas the theory of evolution started with evidence and has become what it is today through building and building through several disciplines of science. And that's one of the differences between the two arguments. Go ahead, Lupin.
Well, I think that if you include the biodiversity of all the types of fish and marine animals, and if you include all the types of insect type animals, and if you include all the types of um, mammalian, or as the Bible says, those that breathe the air of life through their nostrils, you will easily be able to come up with the number of taxonomy creatures that we have during this day.
May I take this, or does someone else want to take this as a response?
No, go ahead.
Okay. So insects are certainly a fascinating point to bring up. Like I said before, I would grant that I would say, even in an extreme estimation, that 10,000 different kinds of insects knew in advance enough to be able to be in the right place at the right time to secure some sort of shelter to be able to survive the flood. And when I say 10,000 species, that's not accounting for the thousands of individuals within each species that would have to proliferate the species. So that's millions.
Let's just go with the ballpark estimate. You know, it's okay. We really don't know, so
So
I'll take that.
to me, I would say 10,000 being a generous estimate. We find that there are 1 million individual species of insects that have been documented. So I think that for a generous estimate being 10,000 as far as the biodiversity that could have survived the flood, I think 1 million is quite a staggering number for such a short period of time. Now, I think that that actually lines up, 10,000 compared to 1 million, with some mass extinctions that have taken place on the Earth even recently, where as little as 1% of a group of species or taxonomy of species were actually able to survive a specific event. So even within our narrative, I would say a 1% survival rate would be a fair estimate. So I just wanted to clarify that to say I'm not trying to apply some sort of different standard to your to your idea of what happened here. I'm just trying to be fair, and I just don't see how personally it stacks up with me.
Okay, well, maybe we can get into a further discussion whenever I'm not so tired, because I've been literally, like, I'm literally butthurt, and trust me, it's not because of any of you guys. It's just because I've been on streams for at least like 9 hours or such. So my ass literally hurts.
No, I'll give you credit, man. I couldn't do that for 9 hours straight. I had to take breaks. I had to take breaks.
It's been pretty rough.
Well, good job on soldiering through that. I mean, as
Oh,
we could
you
keep
got
going with the. Sorry, go ahead, Lupin.
you guys don't make it easy. I'll tell you that.
That's
Lupin,
not
you
our
want to keep?
job.
Do you want to keep going with the video, or are you jamming out of
Yeah.
here? Or?
No, keep going. I'll
Okay,
stick around with you guys if
let's
you
do it.
allow me.
Of course.
So
Say
I'm
that
gonna
again.
bring it up. If you're gonna bring it up, that's fair game for it to be
Oh,
questioned.
okay. But the topic of the debate is there evidence for evolution? For you to be skeptical of Noah's flood, you're welcome to be skeptical whatever you want. But you're off topic, because now I don't have to defend the Bible. I'm not demanding it be taught. You guys are demanding that evolution be taught in schools. You're demanding that all the kids are taught that they're related. Well, I'll show you here. Family tree. Here we have everything, and all the many forms of life on Earth are descended from a common ancestor. They make these family trees and say the humans and the pine trees have a common ancestor, and the sharks and the ferns and the starfish and the octopus. Do you believe this chart represents science?
Yeah.
Okay.
Can we
Here we have
pause?
a protozoa turning to a.
Can you guys explain to me what this chart says?
So we were talking about this before, and this is like a child's version of a phylogenetic tree. If you were to study in genetics in a university, you would not see something that has an amoeba, a pine tree, an elephant, a whale. You would see maybe each individual clade represented in a phylogenetic tree. So this looks like it
Okay.
came out of a sixth grade, textbook or something.
Right. It's extremely simplified to
Fair
the.
enough. Gangster Ghost, do you have the ability to zoom in onto that tree real quick?
May I ask you, or are you in the midst of trying to make a point, Lupin? I'll let you make your point if you're in the midst of trying to make a point.
Well, I just want to hear your explanation for this tree and what it represents and what it is saying.
Sure.
And I want a larger picture of it so we can see.
Can you make it full screen, Gangster Ghost?
I
Can
think
you?
we tried that. It locked up last time.
Oh, did it? Okay.
Mhm.
Well,
I mean, we can
I mean,
kind of
we
we can
can.
kind of see what's going on there. I
Let's
mean,
see
we're
if
going to have common ancestors between where each of the branches come together, and each branch represents a different group of animal. I can't see what those groups are, but where that group hits the branch, you're going to have a common ancestor with the other animal that goes on the next branch,
So
and
so let me see if I can
common
explain it.
ancestor, I think.
Let me see if I can explain it. So let's say if we start at the bottom and then the branch leans to the left, and we have a family of protozoas or single-celled organisms. It's hard to tell because it's so small.
Okay.
Is that? Do you guys agree with that?
That the protozoa is the first form of life?
No, that the protozoa it branches. The protozoa has its own branch to different types of protozoa.
Well, yeah, I think single-celled organisms and multi-celled organisms certainly occupy different points on that tree if we're going to use that particular image as an example. However, I think it's also worthy of note that even with that being the case, with us being multicellular organisms, we have singular cells working within us in order for our body to function the way that it correctly does. So, although there are certainly different branches on this tree, there are elements within them that do work in tandem with our species, or even in the case of parasites, against our species, to their advantage against ours.
Well, you never outgrow your clade. I mean, all the way down,
See,
right?
we were playing a video earlier where that was contradicted multiple times, and it was a very interesting insight to how some of these evolutionists think, because they're saying that you don't outgrow your clade, yet they were giving examples of creatures that outgrew their clade, which was I
Such as.
mean, well, they were saying like, a Chihuahua was made from a non-Chihuahua, but that Chihuahua was made from a animal that was completely separate before it.
Well, it
So,
came from a wolf, right?
I mean, I would say there would be an alpha wolf with genetic things, but then again,
Your last
there's
name's Wolf. I would think you'd know about this.
Well, the thing is, they're saying that it came from an amoeba, so it would have broken out of its clade.
Nobody says it came from an amoeba. I mean,
The
an
the
amoeba is
people
a
the people
an
that we
amoeba
were
is a modern organism,
the people
and
that we were talking about said that it came from an amoeba.
the amoebas today are not what the single-celled organisms were in the past.
Okay. Well, we
Aiden,
can.
jump in here if you hear me say something wrong.
No, no, no. I think what you're saying is correct so far. Do you mind just
Go
really
for it.
quickly if I
Of
think
course.
I think I've addressed your point of this enough to avoid the claim that I'm trying to argue around it or anything, but I just think an interesting way to put the shoe on the other foot here is to ask you, do you think if I pulled you up like a Sunday school extremely simplified version of, a biblical story, do you think if I showed that to you, would that be representative of what the actual Bible says about, say, the story of David and Goliath? If I show you a children's version of that story versus actual scripture, do you think that child's story will be just as in depth and accurate a representation?
Well, the child's version will make concessions to fit a child's narrative. However, the overall message would be the same if you take that to a higher standard biblical perspective. It would still have the same message. Just one would be explaining it in a way that a child could grasp it, and the other way would be explaining it to where maybe somebody who's more studied in the Bible would understand it. That
Right.
does not mean that they would contradict each other.
No, I would never make the claim that they contradict each other. That wasn't what I was trying to say. The point I was trying to make was that in the same way that a child's representation of the story of David and Goliath is not the full representation of that context, and I don't really feel like you would think it'd be that fair if I pulled up a child's version of that story and tried criticizing that story rather than the actual writings that you find within Scripture. I think you could recognize that Scripture has a lot more depth and actual explanation for how David ended up overtaking the throne of the kingdom of Judea. So, that being said, I just wish that you guys would apply the same standard to us, because this is not an image that scientists are using in order to formulate their theories. This is in the same way that a child's version of David and Goliath is not theologians' representation of your Bible. This is not a scientist's representation of how they view things. And I just wish you would apply an even standard to that.
Well, let me explain. Okay, so if you take a child's version of David and Goliath, it will say that David slayed Goliath using a slingshot. And if you guys want me to bring examples of how powerful, because that culture was very, very advanced when it came to using slings as weapons. So if you put that in a child's version, and then you go to a more advanced version of it, it doesn't conflict. It's just going to be worded one for a child and one for more that's studied in the Bible at a higher level.
I'm sorry, could you repeat that last little bit? I think it was me that cut out, not you. But could you repeat that last little bit just so I can properly hear what you said?
Okay, so if you take a children's version of the story of David and Goliath, David slayed Goliath using a sling.
That's correct, yes.
Okay. Yes, and if you take it to a higher level, to a biblical scholar level, you would find the same thing happens, but with much more detail, because that book is explaining it on a higher level than a child's level.
Right.
But they would not cause any contradiction.
I agree.
There would not be any issue. So I don't
It's
understand
an
the argument.
oversimplification, but
Sure.
I would only agree with your standard being levied against us in this instance if this contradicted what was being taught on a scale. This is just, as I was trying to say with your example, an extreme oversimplification in order for, as you had said yourself earlier, it's simplified to the level that a child's mind can grasp it and can understand at least the basic concept of what's being discussed here. But the
Okay.
point that I'm trying to hammer home with you, I'm sorry, I'm almost done. The point that I tried hammering home with you here, though, is that this is not a fair way to represent a scientific viewpoint of evolution, because it's an oversimplification, the same way that showing a child's story of David and Goliath is not the best way of representing that story in an actual full context.
Right. So let me get this straight. So you're saying, as there would be an oversimplification of David slaying Goliath, there would be an oversimplification of the evolutionary model. Um, However, I believe if you take it vice versa, you would see a very high level detailed version of the evolutionary tree, and you could see a high version of the tale of David and Goliath.
Absolutely. That's what I'm trying to illustrate. That's
Da-
absolutely correct.
and the thing is, David and Goliath's story would not contradict, but the evolutionary side, they kind of have some problems.
Well, how do they contradict? Can you provide a demonstration of how this inherently contradicts what a scientist's viewpoint on this would be, rather than just being a simplification?
It would be a lot easier if we could pull up a pull up a college level textbook of the evolutionary tree.
Well, I mean, my fiance has some biology textbooks kicking around still, I'm pretty sure. I don't know where they are right now, but I'm sure I can bring it up for the next show if I can find those.
We can work on that later. Logan,
Can
if
I
you'd
add something there real quick?
go ahead.
I mean, we're talking about scientific papers and not college textbooks. There is a difference. Scientific papers are much more complex and go into much more detail than even college textbooks, unless you're talking about graduate school. So that's where scientists are working in peer-reviewed scientific literature, and they're not putting their ideas and passing them to one another in the public in the form of textbooks. I just want to say that.
So, do we not take the scientific explanation and then put them in college textbooks?
We do, but it's a simplified version, kind of like this tree of life.
We agree that this simplified version is a perhaps a grade school one, but do we not see examples of this in college textbooks and higher level textbooks?
An extremely more
You wouldn't,
complex version of this that's
yeah.
much more multifaceted and is
What I
much more.
was right. What
Go
I was
ahead.
saying to Deviant is you would see something like this for maybe the apes or for the cat family. You would see you wouldn't see something that covers every form of life like that in such a simplified version. Maybe you would in an intro to biology in college. I don't know. Probably not quite like that, but this is a far cry from what geneticists are actually doing in academia, in higher level academia.
Okay. All right. Well, I have no comment.
We can keep playing the video if we want to move
Sure.
forward with things. And I just like to say real quick before we do, hey, we're managing so far to be cordial in this discussion, Lupin. So I hope that we're able to keep that moving forward with things. It's more interesting when I'm actually discussing things with you rather than barking back and forth. So I hope we can keep this up.
You've had quite a lashing today, and I've hoped that has made you kind of realize.
Yeah.
You know, I hope that something. All I hope for you, Ayden, is that something positive has come out of that. I really don't want to dislike you, Ayden. What I saw you do with Stump was extremely disrespectful. Not only to Stump, but I think it was also disrespectful to Gangster Ghost. Because Stump was trying to talk to Gangster Ghost, and you completely
He has his phone number, though, right?
He does, but that's beyond the point. You should have given Stump the respect to talk to Gangster Ghost.
Well, he overtly said that he wasn't willing to listen to anything that basically anybody besides Gangster Ghost had to say. So if he wasn't willing to listen to what anybody else on the show had to say, then why didn't he just call him on the phone or text him on the phone or provide any other form of communication? Because that's what somebody who genuinely doesn't want to hear what anybody else on the panel would do if they wanted to reach out and communicate with them. But you know what? We're getting dragged. Yeah, we're getting dragged into totally different territory here.
With what we're saying, I think we can discuss this a little bit later. If you want to make it cordial, that's fine. But I mean, the moment that I feel like there's personal attacks being had, I won't have it, and I will leave. But if you want to keep it cordial, we can do that.
Well, I just explained how I wanted to keep it cordial. So yeah, let's keep it going.
Yeah, move on with the video, please.
Biology teacher. This is a public school textbook.
Are you trying to suggest that evolution says one protozoa turns into one person?
No. Trillions of protozoa turned into all the millions of people we have today. It's the same idea. It's still stupid.
All trillion of them turned into?
Oh, brother, come on. why don't you be skeptical of what you're saying right now? Did single-celled creatures slowly evolve into humans?
Yeah.
Textbooks say they did. Do you believe they did?
Yep.
Where's the
Can you
evidence for that?
pause?
Has anybody ever seen a single creature, be it a bacteria?
Would that not break the theory of phylogeny? If they're saying that a single cell amoeba evolved into what we would say a human today, does that not break phylogeny?
We're
Big bad moment.
multicellular activity animals, so we still have single cells are part of us.
Well, not only that, but multicellularity is something that we can induce in laboratory settings over relatively short periods of time. So, a leaping between single cellularity and multicellularity is not nearly as large of a leap as some creationists I've known have talked about it as. Is this like monumental gap that just seems to not be able to be circumvented? No, in laboratory settings, it's actually far easier than most people would predict it to be. And I can go and find you an article about that as well if you want to read up on it, Lupin.
You could do it. I'm not gonna make any promises that I'll read it, but I mean, if you want to post it, you can.
Okay, let's keep going.
Yes.
A protozoa, amoeba, whatever. Has anybody ever seen one of those turn into anything other than a protozoa or a bacteria or an amoeba? Nobody ever sees this.
I do believe we see in some algae single cells becoming multicellular.
Well, the algae becoming multicellular, what happened? The algae became a colony that worked together. I think we've seen human beings get together and make an army. Okay, they're still individual human beings. It was single-celled creatures. And you think these single-celled...
Do you guys have any argument with that?
I'm sorry, I was finding the paper to link in the chat. What was the argument that was made?
He said that we see single cell algae produce multiple separate cells of algae, yet they're still algae, and we've seen humans create humans that have formed armies. So, is there any issue there with for you guys with that?
Well, we have multicellular life has been recreated in the lab, as Ayden has said.
But it wasn't multicellular. What it did is it just replicate. It went from single cellular, and it created another single cellular organism, and then it created another single cell organism, and so that grouping would become. You guys would say multicellular, but in reality, it's not multicellular. It's a group of single cells that have created a colony.
But that's what multicellularity is, though, is that when multiple cells work in tandem within the same organism, and both of them they perform separate roles in order to attain the goal of the actual organism as a whole. That's a multicellular creature. So when we're talking about multicellularity being evolved, we're not talking about a colony of organisms being formed, because that is indeed a separate thing. Like, we wouldn't consider an ant colony to be a multicellular organism, for example.
Slow down. So the thing is, those single-celled organisms, they did not create multi-celled organisms.
They did.
No, they did not.
Not in the case of the algae that you're talking about, but I'm saying that there are examples where that has indeed occurred.
Well, I'm speaking on to what they're speaking about. That the algae did not create a multi-celled algae. What it did is created a set of single-celled algae that formed a group. That does not mean any of those algae became a multi-celled algae. It's just a large group of single-celled algae.
So you wouldn't agree that when an algae evolves a mutation that allows it to survive more successfully in a more acidic environment like our oceans are currently becoming, and allowing algal blooms to actually increase in their frequency rather than decrease in the face of that oceanic acidity, you would not say that that is a new adaptation to a different environment?
No, I would say there would still be algae.
Yeah, but I'm talking about a change, an actual, real, noticeable change in that algae's ability to be able to survive within that environment that makes it different in a fundamental way than the algae that existed before it. Hence its
No,
ability to survive in different environmental conditions. Otherwise, how could they not be considered anything but different?
because if you create a army of single-celled algae, you're just creating more single-celled algae. It's not becoming multicellular. It's just becoming a large group of single-celled algae that is just replicating.
Right, but when a contaminant is introduced to that grouping of algae, the vast majority of it is going to die, but some of that algae, in most circumstances, is not going to die. Some of it is going to be able to survive and reproduce in an environment that the rest of it was not able to, because it has a mutation in its genetic code that allows it to be able to subsist on more chemically harsh conditions than it otherwise would have been able to before. That is, indeed, a substantive change, and the point I'm making to you is not that it's different and that it's not algae. Point that I'm making is that when you have these substantive changes happen due to environmental shifts, the more environmental shifts you have over longer periods of time, the more those little changes compound upon each other and present in much more large, noticeable ways.
But let me ask you: Are they still single-celled algae?
In that one instance of one generation to the next, yes, absolutely, in that one particular instance. But over time, that algae is able to present with completely different traits compared to their ancestors before, which does make them a substantively different species, which is why we have different species of algae. We don't just have one singular species of algae. There's many, many different species of algae that exist.
Sure,
And
there's
as you
black algae, green algae, red algae. There's a number of different algae, sure. Uh,
so no, go ahead. Sorry, go ahead.
but will a green algae turn into a red algae or a black algae, or will that algae remain a green algae?
I definitely think that there are instances where that algae will present in a different way, yeah, where we see it have a substantive change. I don't know if color is really the only factor that we could determine to have a substantive change within that species, because you said, there's black algae, green algae, red algae. You're right about that, but it's more than just color that we use to determine those species. It's the environmental conditions they're able to withstand, the pH level of the water that they exist within, how much or how little sunlight they get. Those sorts of things allow it to exist within certain environmental niches. But what we find is that when different environmental niches become available to that algae that weren't otherwise available, yeah, most of it's not going to make it there, but some of it just might. And the ones that do end up getting a head start within that niche and are able to carve out a totally different part of the environment for them to exploit that they didn't before. The best example of that is, you know what? I won't even get into that because I don't want you to think that I'm trying to change the topic. I won't even get. I was going to talk about the coal deposits on the Earth and how that's related to the Carboniferous, but
Do you
I
think?
put a paper in the chat about Chlamydomonas, which is relevant to the topic. But
Do you think
I'm going to
green
get out of here.
algae
I'm going to get
will-
out of here, guys, because I've been here for 2.5 hours.
That's
no, that's
it.
fair enough, Big Bad Mama. That's fair.
That's it.
Yeah,
I've
that's
been on.
it.
I've been on here all day. I've sacrificed my health for you guys.
Well, Lupin said he was going to leave when things get personal, so you're a doo-doo head, Lupin.
Take care, everybody.
Don't start with
Take
that.
care, BBM.
Okay,
It was
bye,
awesome.
Lupin. Have a good night.
Have a good one, Big Bad Mama. Take
Okay,
care.
bye,
I
Ayden.
send
Bye.
my prayers to you.
Bye, BBM.
Thank you. Bye, Deviant. Bye, Logan.
Bye.
Thank you.
I was joking, Lupin. I don't actually think that you're a doo-doo head. It was just simply a joke.
You
No,
just
but
had to.
I mean, it's like the most low-key joke that you could possibly... It's like if someone comes up to you with a foam baseball bat and just taps you with it, you know?
I'm trying to evolve into the Rock's eyebrow, but it's harder.
No, you're working on it. I see it. I see it. You're working on it.
You'll get
But,
there.
he will. He will. I
I
have
used
no
to,
doubt about
I
that.
used to be able to do it very good, but They used to say that I look like the Rock, and I would say I don't know about the Rock, but maybe the Pebble.
The pebble, nice. That really should be Dwayne Johnson's son's nickname, and if it isn't, then mankind has been done a disservice.
Continue, Logan.
Celled algae getting together to make a colony is going to somehow turn them into a whale or a butterfly or a human. This is religion. This isn't science.
Ask your question again. If I believe that, I'm just going to reiterate, and you can tell me if I've got it.
Do you believe single-celled creatures, whichever one you want to start with, protozoa, amoeba, bacteria, I don't care. Do you believe single-celled creatures evolved into humans, like this chart showed?
Yeah, over billions of years. Yep.
Okay. Where is the evidence for this? There are certainly billions of protozoa today. Why don't they do it again? Let's see them evolve into something else.
Okay. So the evidence that we have that we came from a single-celled organism and have actually been influenced quite substantially by fewer than single-celled organisms is our endogenous retroviruses that we find within our genes. That's some of the best evidence that we have that we came from a much more comparatively simple organism than what had existed before. Not only that, but mitochondria and mitochondrial DNA are another great point to be able to illustrate how we have in us a cell, or at least what used to be a cell, the mechanisms of what used to be a cell, that basically powers our cells and allows them to be able to digest nutrients or be able to cycle them out in the way that they're able to be able to make the body subsist. These things are not evidence to me of design, because to me, what I imagine, and I think this is a really interesting conversation, what I imagine when I think of a world that's designed is a world where every single creature has a completely unique and distinct set of biology from a different organism in order to specifically meet that creature's needs that cannot be traceable to another creature. So to me, the idea of a common family or phylogeny of creatures does not make sense if you want humanity to be entirely separate from the rest of the organisms that have been created. Because humanity, when you look at our traits, are not really all that separate from the rest of these creatures in much of anything except our ability to dictate nuance and our conscience. Like, these things are very big distinguishing factors, don't get me wrong, but we're still mammals, like other mammals are, right? Like, we still have the same needs as these other creatures. We need to eat, we need to expel waste. I don't think that, and we have characteristics like our tailbone that are shared with other creatures extremely close to us genetically, that I don't imagine have much of any explanation in a world where everything was uniquely designed.
So that was an assumption. Our tailbone connects various. Our tailbone connects various tendons to our body to control them. So, to me, that shows a design.
Well, if you look at embryonic photos of very early human embryos, we actually not even all that early. I think it actually happens up to about a month. You can see that tailbone is actually a fully fledged tail. It just gets underdeveloped after that stage within fetal development. So it's more than just this thing that holds other things together. It is indeed a remnant of what used to be a very real tail, and that we can see very similar examples of in other apes that are very closely related to ourselves. So to
I
me,
can
that
believe.
similarity, just real quick, I'm almost done. that similarity that's found between those two shows that they were not uniquely designed. They actually share an ancestry with each other that we can observe in those similarities.
I could be mistaken, but that tailbone uh, is developed. Actually, you kind of threw off my thought here a little bit. Maybe it'll come back to me. Maybe it won't.
You've fallen for my trap yet again, Lupin! Wahahaha! I've gotten you
No,
yet again!
it's just it's kind of the vodka.
Well, I mean, hey, Father Charles special, am I right? No, I'm just kidding. I'm just
What do
kidding.
they do? Do they do baptisms in vodka now?
Yes, that's the new Orthodox tradition. That's right. That's right. Hey, Nostrovia. Continue the
Yes.
video.
My brother Nikolai, he never lets me down.
I hope everyone had a good years. Hey, Mrs. Mudd.
My contention is
Happy New Year.
nobody in the history of the world has ever seen any animal or plant produce offspring that a 4-year-old would consider a different kind. The moth example you gave, ask a 4-year-old. They're going to point to both of them and say, that's a moth and that's a moth. It didn't change from a protozoa. There is no evidence for these family trees. This is artwork.
What?
This is a bunch of lines.
So,
Do
why
you
is
disagree? Do you disagree with what he said?
I don't disagree that a 4-year-old wouldn't necessarily be able to immediately distinguish the difference, but I don't understand why a yardstick is arbitrary as a 4-year-old is being used in a conversation whose auspices is supposed to be scientific in nature. Like, Kant always talks about how this isn't science or that isn't science. Well, it's not scientific to use a 4-year-old's estimation of what looks similar to another thing as evidence for your argument.
Talk to me at a 3rd grade level and repeat what you just said.
It's okay, sure. So when Kant says that this is not science or that is not science, he is trying to say that there is a certain standard that you use when you talk about science, right? That there's a certain way that you go about talking about science. So when he says, well, let's take a look at these moths and ask a 4-year-old if they've changed. No, they're still moths. That is not a scientific way of measuring change between two things. That is a very arbitrary yardstick to be able to use. That's not scientific.
What are the two things?
Those two things being a 4-year-old's ability to determine two different moths, whether or not they are in fact two different species from each other, because that was the standard that Kent just used earlier there. He said, well, if you take a 4-year-old and you get two different moths and you put them in front of them, they're going to go, well, that's still a moth. That is not a scientific way of measuring whether or not something has actually changed. That is literally just an appeal to, well, a child thinks that they look the same, therefore my argument is right.
I think a child would be able to differentiate that. Yeah, you got a moth here that looks a little bit different than the moth there, but they're both moths. Are they? Will they ever? Will those moths ever change into any other type of creature?
That will certainly turn into, over time, a different kind of species depending on what environmental niches open up, but that's entirely dependent on how the environment around them shapes up over the future.
So
Because,
this is purely hypothetical then.
well, absolutely, because you have examples in evolution like the hagfish, like we've talked about before, whose environmental niche was comparatively stable and who was able to inhabit a very specific mode of being able to survive for a very long period of time, and that did not prompt much of any actual physical change within that individual species. That does not mean that it doesn't have other ancestors, but that species itself has gone through very little to any actual change. Trilobites are another great example of this. I don't know if you've ever seen trilobite fossils, But
Trilobites, like the little creatures that crawl on the bottom of the ocean.
like the
They
little beetle
they-
things, yeah, the
Yeah,
beetle-looking
like
things.
the real cockroaches of the sea.
Yeah. You know what I'm
That
talking about.
that
Yeah,
have,
Arth
that have been around for billions and millions of years,
many
according to
millions
you
of years.
guys.
Yes, many
Yet,
millions of years.
yet there's still trilobites today, around the same size,
They're
maybe
not
smaller.
trilobites.
We find
Yep.
trilobites.
No,
They
those the species that we're talking about that we find preserved in fossils are not the same species that you're talking about.
Let me see. Can you please share my screen?
Oh, did you change the settings so there has to be permission now, Logan?
That's how it's always been.
No, there's a slider. He's shown me.
So these trilobites,
Sorry. Trilobite, Wikipedia, yeah.
and these things haven't really changed very much over millions of years. I think these would be in the same family as the horseshoe crab, which we see plenty of today.
Did you see, Lupin, what it said in the first sentence of the Wikipedia article?
Oh, let's go and trust Wikipedia.
No,
You're the
but
one that brought it up.
Okay, all
are
right. Let me see.
extinct marine.
Extinct marine arthropods from the class Trilobite. Trilobites form one of the earliest known groups of arthropods. The first appearance of trilobites in the fossil record dates to the basis of the, I can't read that because it's too small on the screen, the Adabinian stage of the early Cambrian period, 521 million years ago, and they flourished throughout the lower Plesiozoic before slipping into a long decline when, during the Devonian, all trilobite orders except the Protidia died out. So, when we're
And
talking
you
about
don't have to trust Wikipedia. You can always go down to the sources and check them.
that is true. That is one of the best parts about Wikipedia is that it
Yes.
requires that you cite sources basically on any claim that you make. So,
Yeah.
as far as this is concerned, I was trying to actually, this illustrates another point, or the same point actually, that I was talking about before. Trilobites are a species that inhabited a relatively stable environmental niche until the Devonian came around, and that environmental area that they lived within changed so dramatically that they weren't able to adapt to those conditions. And we find that even today. I mean, we're going through a mass extinction event on this planet right now, known as the Holocene extinction. And we see every single day individual species that die out because they're not able to compete in the new environment that they find themselves within.
Can you give us some examples of animals? Are you gonna bring in pandas or?
Sure, like the black rhinoceros, the South African black rhinoceros is an example of a species that went entirely extinct because they were either I think it was a combination of being hunted to extinction as well as environmental destruction of the savannas where they typically lived. So we're seeing right now, primarily through man-made means, an event where huge groups of species, huge amounts of biodiversity on this planet is getting destroyed. And that's just through human intervention. That's not with an event as monumental as an asteroid or a global freeze or another different event.
What about overhunting naturally?
That's certainly another way that species could go extinct. There's definitely occasions where predatory species overproduce within an environment, and in order to try and keep up their numbers, overhunt their prey and result in a total bottoming out of that part of the food web within the environment. That's certainly known to happen.
Sure, sure. Yeah. I'm gonna refill my drink. I'll be back. You guys continue on.
All right, well, yeah, you can keep playing the the video if you want.
On paper is all it is. This is deceitful. This is propaganda. This is stupid. Real stupid.
So you think those lines are just drawn helter-skelter, willy-nilly, based on no basis for anything? Why? So why would someone do that?
They're on drugs.
They're on drugs.
What?
So
How can you just say so? All
I'll just assume that was a joke. Honestly, I'll just assume that was a
I
joke,
sure
and I
hope
won't even
so.
address it. Because if he was being serious, then whatever. I'll just give him the benefit of a doubt and assume that he was joking there. All I know is that if I tried making the claim that somebody on the Bible was on drugs and that's how they came to their conclusion, I'm pretty sure Ken Hogan wouldn't be all that pleased.
No,
Tried
for
making
sure
that.
not.
Pretty sure he might take a slight amount of issue with that. So, it's just another example, though, where it's rules for me and not for thee. I can make sniping remarks about you guys and your way of thinking, but the moment that you do it to me, I'm persecuted.
Yep.
Keep going, Logan.
thousands of scientists who did that, they were all on drugs, all of them?
I don't know. It must have been because they all got these stupid charts showing. Let's see. I'll back it up for
I actually don't
Here they
have that stupid chart. Hold on. Pause. That's not true. You just blatantly lied because it's not a scientist. This is not what scientists are using. All right? That is just as dishonest as me taking a child's rendition of the story of David and Goliath and going, this is what modern theologians are using to come to their conclusions about what happened at that time. It's not true. You know that's not true because you've actually done the research into this, and you would know that that is in fact not the case if you look into the Bible. It actually provides a much more detailed account of what happened. So, no, that's not true. You know that's not true, and you're applying an entirely different standard for how you consider this to be evidence than you would to your own religion. And that only tells me that you know that this argument is felonious, Kent. You know that it doesn't actually have any legs to stand on. You're just trying to throw these child-like grade school level charts out there and say, this is what scientists are using to come to their conclusions about reality? You're a scientist, Kent? Really?
He's a joke.
The most common one right here, the tree of life.
Go ahead. Keep going.
Yep. Humans and whales and birds and dogs and lions and everything. Everything came from a common ancestor. This is what is taught. Hey, Bobby, in the Jeep between my seats is with this chart, the bigger version laminated. Let me have one up here, please, okay? I say, this is propaganda. This is an observable science. This one has a ladybug related to a human being. Do you believe you're related to a ladybug?
Related through a common ancestor, yeah.
Okay, good. Do you have any evidence for that? Would it be okay for me to...
The fact that that my cells and the ladybug cells are pretty much identical. I think it's like, what, like we're 60% related to, I believe 60% related to a banana, genetically identical to a banana. And then various degrees as you get, your common ancestor gets nearer and nearer to you.
I think the fact that there is similar DNA in each of these creatures is evidence of a common designer, and there are similar proteins in these creatures, so that it's a one big network. I can eat the brown cow can eat the green grass and turn it into white milk, and I can drink it and give it blonde hair. That's proof of an amazing design. Recycle everything. It's not proof of a common ancestor with the cow and the grass. It's proof that God designed the world the way He did, so everything can be interrelated.
So God designed that way everything can be interrelated to one another. Okay, so how could those things not be interrelated and also have individual separate purposes that they serve in terms of their anatomy? Like, how could they not be interrelated in terms of that brown cow eating the green grass and producing the white milk in order to make the blonde hair? How does that require you needing to have these things have some sort of relation anatomically with each other? That's just a felonious argument. You're trying to say that the brown cow drinks or eats you know what it is. He makes that whole statement. He makes that whole gish gallop and tries to say, well, that's just like this thing being anatomically similar to this other thing. No, it's not, because if those things were anatomically distinct, you could still get that exact same result, Ken.
Right.
Can I respond?
Go ahead.
So what he's trying to say here, that was dangerous. What he's trying to say here is, in order for all these processes to be able to be a symbiotic type relationship where the cow can eat the green grass and produce white milk, and that milk is being able to be consumed by humans.
Makes the blonde hair, that's right.
So to somebody who sees creation, sees that took a designer to be able to make that happen.
Right, but we're not talking about a designer making that happen. We're talking about the interrelatability of those things. And what I'm saying is that you could have a brown cow that's anatomically and genetically entirely separate from the green grass for it to be able to still eat the green grass and be able to produce the white milk that Kent, who in this version of creation could be entirely genetically distinct from that brown cow, he'd still be able to imbibe in that milk. I don't see why those things being interconnected genetically or anatomically factors into his ability to be able to do those things. It's just speculation. That's all that it is.
Well, if that cow could not produce a way to digest those fibrous things, then there would be a problem. Would there not be?
Well, of course, absolutely, I would agree with that. But how does it need to have a shared genetic relationship with that grass in order for it to be able to digest it? It's not like there's a specific gene in that cow that recognizes that particular species of grass. So it's not. No, it's really not. It's a case of that cow being able to digest that because that's the niche that it's been able to exploit within that environment, and whose ancestor was able to exploit it before them. So I really don't see how that has anything to do with genetic interrelatability with each other. All that says is that, wow, things are interdependent on one another, therefore they were designed. Well, if that's the case, then why is the majority of all the species that exist on this earth parasitic? There's more species on this planet that rely on other species through parasitic relationships to survive than there are free form species that don't rely on other species in a parasitic relationship. That's not exactly evidence of an all merciful designer in my eyes.
So you were saying that there are more species of symbiotic relationships?
Parasitic. There's more species of parasitic relationships than there are species of non-parasitic relationship.
Than symbiotic relationships?
Yeah.
What about neutral relationships?
Well, that's what I'm talking about, is independent relationships or symbiotic relationships. The most common species that we find in the total taxonomy of species are those that are parasitic in nature. And you can look that up if you want, but the point that I'm trying to make is that if this is evidence of a designer, then we need to go into all of the implications of that design. Those implications not exactly being as nice as somebody that lives in a nice cushy place like we do would exactly be able to determine objectively. I'm pretty sure a child in Ghana, or Indonesia would probably have a slightly different outlook on how mercifully designed everything was.
Interesting that you brought that up. Do you feel that you have been blessed to be in the position where you are, where you're in a first world civilization, that you have access to an education system which is much more higher than the majority of other countries? Do you consider that a blessing? Consider that just, hey man, it's just the chaos of the universe that led me to this point where I'm at.
I actually consider it not to be a blessing, and the reason why I don't consider it to be a blessing is because, to me, the implication of a blessing is that there were other people that were not blessed. And if I was given this circumstance through no fault or, either through no fault or merit of my own, then that means that that child in Ghana was cursed with the opposite circumstance and had to go through an objectively more difficult situation through no fault or merit of their own as well. So no, I don't consider myself blessed. I just consider myself statistically lucky.
So you're not you don't think that you were blessed and maybe that child was cursed?
No, because like I said, I think in order for me to be blessed, that child does have to be cursed. Because in order for that intent, that positive intent to be imparted upon me, that means that there were countless other children who were purposefully passed up, ungiven that exact same blessing. So I think the implications of me being blessed to be here are actually a little bit more shaky and scary than you might think they are. Because that just means that that child in Ghana was cursed to that existence.
I don't appreciate Christians jabs and stump. I will just say that much right now. Let me ask you this. Uh, Due to the circumstance that you were born in a first world country, you can have an effect on those that are in third world countries that would be a very positive, good thing. Do you think that you would consider it a blessing that you are able to influence them?
I certainly think that I'm in a better position to be able to influence them, but once again, I think that there are countless people in the third world who are more generous than me, and if they were given the same means that I have, would do plenty more with those means than I currently do. So I think
So
the
you're
fact that those people were denied that ability to be able to do that would be nothing but a curse if I was blessed with that ability and do not take it to my full extent to be able to do so.
So then we're lucky that we have people that are more capable of making a big impact on those people that live those less unfortunate lives that we take advantage of here living in a first world developed country. That these people that are in the first world developed country go out and help those that are in dire straits and need. Do you not see that as a type of balancing in the world here that
Um,
some people feel called for to do that?
I don't necessarily think it's a balancing so much as it's indicative of our individual natures and the circumstances that we're put into that dictate at least part of that nature. I don't think that it's all just a matter of circumstance. I do think that there's certainly a part of us that is inherent, so to speak, as far as how we look at the world and how we perceive it, but certainly a very large portion of how we look at reality around us is dictated by our circumstance. And no, I think the fact that I was given circumstance where I could give everything I possibly could to the betterment of those people, whereas somebody that would actually do that was passed up on that is not in fact an indication of balancing. I think it's an indication that some people, like myself included, are unjustly given more than they actually deserve in a world where the God of the Bible exists.
Oh, you know what? The world is a very unfair place. Trust me. Nobody before they were born had any option of how their life was going to become about. We have people like you and I would suggest Deviant Outcast and Gangster Ghost that have been blessed to be living in a first world country where we have freedom of expression, freedom of knowledge, and we can go and explore all these freedoms that we have, and make those and bring benefits to those who do not have those opportunities. We have a for some reason it seems like for me it's more religious people that want to go and help those people.
I mean, you could certainly make that argument that it's more religious people. I'd have to see data behind philanthropic organizations to be able to support that, but
I mean, how many missionaries go out to all these places? I mean, to very brutal places where there's very hostile environments where every animal, every bug, every insect, heck, every person may want to try and kill you, and they go out there risking their lives trying to preach the gospel and explain to them that they can be saved. They will be saved.
Right. You're saying that there's a group of people that go out and do that, and I would certainly agree that there is in fact a group of people that go and do that under religious auspices, but there's also organizations like Doctors Without Borders that are primarily made up of non-religious people that still do plenty of philanthropic work around the world in order to try and help and benefit people. It's like what I would say that, while there's the Red Cross, I'd say Doctors Without Borders is a more secular equivalent of that, but still does very equivalent work that is noticeable and tangible all around the world. So I don't think that helping people and wanting to better other people in their circumstances is an exclusively religious thing. I think there are plenty of secular people that have done lots in their lives, certainly plenty more than myself or you, to better this world around them and make it a better place for everyone living within it.
Let me ask you this: are you guys gonna make a moral judgment that I decided to have a drink or two? Are you gonna say that that is against my Christian values?
What?
I,
I
I don't
won't.
see I don't see any reason why you having a drink or two is against your Christian values. You're not a Christian that thinks that you can imbibe in alcohol, but at the same time, I think if you're allowed to have a drink or two, I think I'm allowed to have a hit or two off the old herbal pipe, if you know what I'm saying. I think those are pretty equivalent as far as being able to be used in moderation.
You're a human being, and I do not judge you. However, I'm seeing some comments that is somewhat judgmental that I'm a Christian and I may want to have a drink.
I
No.
think I might go have a drink right now. Honestly, I have no time like the present. I'm gonna go pour a drink right now. I'm gonna stand in solidarity with you, Lupin.
I congratulate Stump and I admire Stump for him not drinking and being able to deal with you guys because you guys can be very difficult to deal with.
I could certainly say the same about you as well. Trust me.
Oh well, hey.
Well, I don't
All I
drink
can say to
and
that
I'm
is
not a Christian.
all I can say to that is cheers.
Hey, I'll cheers you in just a moment. Give me one sec.
You guys suck to Lupin. I'm not drunk. I'm not drunk yet. You haven't seen me drunk. Gangster Ghost, if you don't mind, can you play a little bit?
Yeah, well, before we do that, I would like to address the fact that it's about 11:30 for Gangster Ghost. So if he is too tired or wiped out to continue, that's 100% okay. It's up to him. But I just want to mention that.
Lupin Barn and we'll be done. Would that be all right, Lupin?
It's up to you.
Okay.
It's your channel. I expect you to have full control of your channel, and also not let people manipulate you into who should have control of your channel when it comes to bans and mods. I think that should be up to you, and do not feel peer pressured.
You don't think that
Uh,
Logan appointed his own mods? Like, do you think we told him which mods he was supposed to appoint?
I don't think Logan. I think Logan is very lenient to who he decides gets a wrench and who doesn't. The fact
But
that
that's his
Stump,
choice, though, right? You said it was his channel.
it is, but I also see
But
the people. I see the people that he hangs around with and tend to manipulate him and say, this person should have a wrench. This person should have a wrench. This person should be banned.
last
You
time
know
I
what?
checked, we weren't saying that you were agents of the most horrific, destructive creature to ever exist and of all time. I'm pretty sure that's a pretty manipulative thing to be able to say to somebody that we're agents of this horrible eldritch being. We've never claimed that you had to be a horrible person in order to have the views that you have. We've just
Here-
simply told Gangster Ghost throughout the time that we've known him, throughout the time I've known him, which is much longer than you. I've known him personally for quite some time. I
Are
can
you
tell you
related?
quite confidently. No, I'm not related to him. I've just known him over the internet for quite some time at this point. And Gangster Ghost can vouch for that.
Yeah.
But
Gangster, can I ask you a question really quick?
Yeah.
Do you, and please do not talk over him. I just want to hear his answer. Do you think that me playing that video was in any way, shape, or form me trying to bully you?
Bullying, I don't know about that.
I don't know is a perfectly fine answer.
I don't know.
Okay.
Uh,
Well, it was not intended to bully you. It was intended to get a message across.
it was intended to offend people.
No, it was not intended to offend anybody. If you got offended, that may
No,
be your own problem.
you said before you played that video, and I can go back and show this right now. You said that you came in to show that to get us triggered and to make us upset. You said that was the reason why you came in to play that video, was to get us upset. And you even said on your show, oh, well, when we come at atheists with material to try and make them upset and get them all riled up, all of a sudden it's a different story. So you know that you went in there with the intent to try and rile up some people and stir the pot. That was your intention. Okay? So please don't try and say that it isn't, because it's insulting to my intelligence and it's insulting to
was-
Gangster Ghosts.
I would like to say it was never implied to Gangster Ghost that I was trying to bully him. If anything, I was trying to send a message to the atheists surrounding you, Gangster Ghost, and you guys couldn't decipher the message. It was a 1 minute clip, and we didn't get past 35 seconds of it.
So
But Gangster,
let me
I was not trying to offend you. I was not trying to bully you. From what I've seen in this channel, is that there have been many profanities said, and in that video, there was one profanity and one bleeped out profanity.
hyperfixating on an issue that we've already gone over 100 times and not actually addressing the primary concern for the upteenth time. I mean, come on, Lupin.
Is what that I did not ask Gangster Ghost for his permission.
Well, not only that you didn't ask for his permission, but the fact that you played a video that you admitted you wouldn't play on Proverbs Guy's channel, but it's okay over at Gangster Ghost because it's a Christian channel. Lupin, you as a Christian, you're supposed to abide by a certain standard of behavior in
Okay,
everything that you do and everywhere that you go. You're not supposed to change how you behave in one group just because there's different. I know you're a human, but I'm telling you, this is what the scripture advises you as a believer to do.
Okay, so I'm supposed to take you as somebody who doesn't even agree with our scripture, and I'm supposed to take your advice on your opinion on scripture?
No, I'm actually telling you that that's what the scripture says. You can take my opinion and do whatever you want with it, but my opinion is irrelevant to what scripture says. Scripture says that you're supposed to act a certain way, and that way is in a Christ-like manner in any place that you go.
Let me ask you this. If I bleeped out the cuss words and would have played that video, would that make any difference?
Yeah, you'd still have somebody talking about somebody raping somebody's wife and holding a gun to somebody's head, and having that be the auspices of why someone would be converted. So let me actually address that argument rather than addressing the controversy surrounding it, because you claim that we never actually addressed that argument. So the actual argument that's being made there is just as equally applicable if a Muslim, like Tate, by the way, is. If a Muslim was saying it, or if a Hindu was saying it, or if a Buddhist was saying it. There's plenty of people throughout history that when confronted with, you need to convert or you're going to die, or I'm going to kill you and this is your last chance to do something, their minds will revert to, I need to call out to some sort of supernatural force to try and intercede on my behalf. So how is it any more true for the God of the Bible than it is for Ahura Mazda?
let me just ask you this, okay? If that situation ended up happening to you, what do you think your reaction would be? Would you be cursing the God, whether it be the Jesus Christ or Vishnu or
I'd be thinking about my
what?
family. I wouldn't be worried about some
You
sort
wouldn't be
of.
worried about a divine deity
I
that is superior to all your family?
And
okay.
yeah, I mean, ultimately, my family is what I know in my experience. I don't have any experience of this divine deity, so I'm going to have them on my minds because they're more paramount in my thoughts.
I can tell you this. I've been very, very close to death multiple times throughout
How
my
many
life.
times? Tell me about it.
Shall I tell you about it? Well, I've been in two quite severe car accidents. One which left me paralyzed.
I've been in
I'm not.
three.
Yeah, sure. It doesn't matter. I'm just telling you.
I'll let
I
you.
have more car accidents than you, deviant
Yeah,
outcast, or sorry,
I
Yeah,
taste.
fell
they
out
were
from the
very
fifth
they were very
floor.
tragic.
Sorry, sorry.
You fell
I
off.
didn't.
Did you try and do this on purpose, Deviant? Did you were you intentionally trying to end your life?
Uh, not on those occasions. No, but I
But
have
you've had occasions where you have been.
for sure, for sure.
Okay, I sympathize with you in those occasions because I too have had occasions where I've been in the similar situation. Continue.
Yeah. Uh, I can tell you that none of the times um, I've ever I've ever called out. I've also had guns pointed at me. Uh,
So have I.
I've been strangled and men several occasions that were not good, but I never called out
Were
to a
they?
god.
Oh, so you're saying in any of? Okay,
But I
please
can
be.
tell you this. I can tell you this. When I my first car accident, exactly 1 month after that, I fell from the fifth floor. Uh, I
Did you fall or did you jump?
no, I fell. I fell. It was an accident.
Okay.
Uh, yeah, I fell over a railing uh, in a kind of staircase, but with a huge hole in the middle. Uh, and I had a really hard time to seeing my own reflection in the mirror for about 6, 7, 8 months or so afterwards, because I realized that
After you recovered,
yeah, after
it was hard
the
to look
car
in.
accident.
It was hard to look in the mirror because you didn't see the same person that you saw in the
No,
mirror.
no, because I had a hard time to reconcile the fact that the person staring back at me was still alive,
Was
even though
was
I
you?
shouldn't be. Yeah, yeah.
Sure. I've been there.
What do you
So
know?
I feel like the
I want Deviant to continue. I want to hear these stories here. I want to see what makes Deviant Deviant. I'm very curious, Deviant. I'm very curious.
Oh, but there are lots of things. These are just some of the high points.
Or low points.
Yeah, depending,
well, the high
depending.
points became the low points in a matter of just a couple seconds, if you
It
really think
did,
about
it
it.
did,
So,
it did.
You know, I don't know how to explain how whenever I was doing a drug that was so devastating to my body to a point where I overdosed and I was declared dead for about 3 to 5 minutes. And in that time I saw and I experienced such a dark demonic force. And you know, you guys can take this however you like, but I experienced total darkness, and then I experienced the force that was totally evil, that was waiting for me to continue down that path to where I continue to self-destruct myself, and in essence join them. They wanted me to join. They wanted me to destroy myself even more, to join them, because they knew that I was in such a self-loathing position. They wanted me to end my life to to fall into their trap. And I'm here to tell you guys that the fact that I even got past that, and you can take this whether you feel like this is sincere or not. I promise you, this is sincere and from my heart. That I truly believe that I was allowed to escape that whenever I was blue in the face, whenever I had no pulse, when my heart was not beating, when I had no brain activity, when my parents were slapping me in the face, trying to wake me up, um, and was completely blue and dead, and they thought I was gone, and I came back to tell you guys that there's something on that other side that I I can't even describe how devastating that moment was to even see that that place of darkness, that place of it was weird. It was literally cold and heat and nothing but
Emptiness?
excuse me, what'd you say?
No, I asked if it was emptiness.
there there was emptiness, and there was a much more, there was a much more powerful sense of emptiness that I cannot explain. And I want to tell you guys that I saw that, and I was luckily enough able to come out of that. And I don't know if that was my calling to tell you guys that, hey, I saw something that I guarantee you I do not wish anybody here ever goes through that experience. Now, whether or not you could say, "Oh, he's full of it, he's lying," I'm telling you 100% what I saw. And if you think I'm lying, you think I'm lying. If you think I'm telling the truth, I'm telling the truth. But I would never want anybody to experience what I saw on that day.
I mean,
I think you're sincere. I
yeah,
I
I
think
don't
you're
think he's
sincere in
lying.
your. No, absolutely not. I think you're 100% sincere. We may differ on what was the how do you say it, the underlying reasons, uh, what created those images and those feelings, etc. Maybe we
Let me
differ, but
may, may,
I
may I
believe
tell
you,
you a
and yeah,
little
I
bit?
believe your sincerity.
May I tell you about my history?
Sure, sure.
Okay. So I grew up in the 90s. I smoked weed, and then that went
Yeah,
into
bro.
that went into coke.
No, bro.
That went into acid. That went into salvia. That went into alcoholism. That went into all these different things. And I can tell you, there's a difference whenever you pass out on these things. It's like you just fall into a deep sleep. You have no dreams, not whatever. I'm not going to say what it was that I was taking that made me, because I do not want to give anybody ideas. I do not want to say what I was taking that made me have this. But I will say it was such a dangerous drug that I was dead. I was dead for 3 to 5 minutes. And I know the difference between a hallucination, being passed out and just waking up, and a near-death experience.
Right.
That near-death experience was something unlike I've never experienced with all the drugs, including ecstasy, including MDMA, including, I mean, you name it under the sun, I would take it.
I mean, like, I never. I'm thankful in that I never gotten any of the too hardest stuff. I did a bit of acid and mushrooms at an earlier point in my life, and I'm pretty much satisfied with everything that I got out of that at that point. But I mean, there's definitely been occasions where, I mean, I've only had one near death experience in my life, and it was when I was 14. And I had the brilliant idea with my classmate that we were going to skip track and field, and we were going to go and get drunk with a little stash of liquor that we'd had in the forest. So somehow I managed, as an anorexic 14-year-old who hadn't eaten anything that day, to down half of a 2-6 of white rum and make it all the way across town one way or another. I don't remember how I made it across town. But apparently I just ended up collapsing over at the other side of town when we were trying to make our way some such where, and I ended up having to be taken to the hospital and had to get my stomach pumped and all of that minutia. So it was certainly, they actually took my blood alcohol level, and they said that, a very drunk adult is a 0.2 blood alcohol level, and I was at a 0.42. So I
That's
was
lethal.
certainly, yeah, no, I was at a point where I could have gone into a coma or I could have died if I didn't immediately get an intervention. And I can say from my personal experience that I didn't reach out to some deity, or I didn't feel the presence of some deity. I can say from personal experience the thing I had on my mind was my family, and honestly, primarily their disappointment of me was the primary thing that was lurking in my mind at that point. Was, how are they going to think of me when I'm gone? How are they going to think of the mistake that I made here? And how are they going to remember me because of this? Those were the things that were really on my mind at that point in time. I wasn't really worried about a creator, and a creator never made themselves apparent to me at that point in time. So I'm not trying to invalidate your experience at all, Lupin. I'm just trying to say we all have our own brushes with life's experiences, and we get
There's
our own
nothing
takeaways from it.
there's nothing that you can do to invalidate my experience, and there's nothing I can do to validate my experience to you. So
No.
it's an equal thing. I don't know if you guys can see the scar.
Kind
Yeah.
of. I can see like the outline a little bit there, yeah.
Yeah.
It
Lupin.
goes from all the way down here.
Right. Yeah,
I,
I can
I
see.
was I was about to lose my arm, and if I wasn't a minute late, that doctor said you would have lost your arm. You would have been an amputee. And that's
Wow.
that's and that's not even a moment that I had a. That was a blackout moment. That wasn't a spiritual moment. That wasn't a hallucination. That wasn't a dream. That was a total blackout moment.
I'm glad.
I'm glad you're still with us.
Yeah, I'm
You
glad
have
you're all right, Lupin.
to be fairly honest with you guys. I shouldn't be here with you guys. Okay, and I will say that is in my view a miracle in itself, because I should not be here.
I'm
I
glad you
mean,
are.
What were you gonna
I'm,
say, Logan?
yeah, sorry, go ahead, Logan.
I'm glad you are here. I'm glad you're all right, Lupin.
Same here.
Thank
Yeah.
you. Thank you. I
Yeah.
I mean,
appreciate it. And I don't know how God works. I do not understand the mind of God, but I do know that there is a God. I know this for a fact. Okay? I know this for a fact. And whether God put me on this planet just to even communicate with you guys and try and help you, I don't know. I don't know how God thinks. But I don't think that anything that we do is not already known what God's plan is for us. So this may very well be a um, a play that God has put us in, and we are just acting out that play.
well, you know what, Lupin? everything else that happened today aside, just for one moment, can we both have a toast to the fact that we both made it out of those crappy situations and we're here to have this conversation right now?
Cheers.
I think so.
Cheers.
And to that, I'm glad. And you know what? I really wish that you guys did not see. Let me have a sip, just in case. Whose mic is that?
I don't know whose mic that. Oh, you know what? That might actually be me. That's my dog eating in the background. Sorry. He's a very loud
Dog sounds
eater.
weird.
Oh, is that not him? I thought that was the clinking of the bowl in the background.
No,
but
it
no, I
was
hear it
like
now.
a
Yeah, that's not me then.
Do you guys feel like this is a drunk rambling? I feel like I'm being judged by Christian.
I mean, look, I definitely feel like alcohol is functioning as a social lubricant here, but I don't think that I would ever go close to drunken rambling territory. I just think that alcohol's doing its job and being a social lubricant.
Right. It's keeping us all on a level where we're not attacking each other, which is a bless. I mean, I'm not advocating for drinking, but I mean, at least you and I are able to conversate. And yeah, sometimes I enjoy a drink or two. I don't think that makes me an alcoholic. I'm not constantly drunk. I've been into rehab where people were getting drunk off Listerine.
Oh, I had that happen when I was working at a grocery store, and we had a repeat offender that would put himself in the bathroom and would just lock himself in there and would just down a bottle that he got in the aisle. And I think he ended up eventually passing away, unfortunately. But yeah, when I was working at the grocery store at my local town, we had a repeat offender that would do that constantly, unfortunately. So, I mean, like I've seen some real dregs of humanity in my time, some real bottom feed. And I'm not, please don't misinterpret. I'm not talking about anybody on the internet. I'm talking about people I met in my real life, some real bottom feeding people in my time. And I think that those people are certainly a reflection of one part of humanity, but I don't think that those people are that way because they were just inherently born with a disposition to do wrong and to wrong their fellow man. I think that a lot of what came from that was conditioned into them in their lives.
I agree, but I agree to a much higher point that everybody is conditioned to do wrong versus to do rights. And we will see that in children. We will see that in children. You do not have to see. You do not have to see. It doesn't take much for you to realize that a child will begin to start stealing, whether they know it's right or wrong. They'll begin to steal. They will begin to start lying as a child. It's inherently built into them. It's a flaw that us humans have because of the fall of man.
Right, but that's an inherent thing that I was talking about, though, right? Like that disposition towards doing wrong being the result of this fall of all of humanity. This is where you and I disagree because I think that that wrong, as you would put it, and I would certainly put it as well, that nature to lie or to cheat or to steal or to do any of those things, I think that was imbued into that child either through their parents, through their peers, or a combination of the two. So I think that I don't think that it's a circumstance that's out of people's control. I think that you'll find in some societies, like in Denmark, for example, there will be a lot less people per capita who get into a life of crime and degradation than in Somalia. And I think that that's indicative of society being the primary factor in why people end up that way in life rather than a fall of humanity, so to speak.
Now, Aiden, Did I hear you say something positive about Danes?
They made Lego, Deviant. You can't deny it.
About who?
Dang, you got me there.
If it weren't for Denmark, we wouldn't have Lego. I know that they only surrendered in 6
Oh.
hours and that they're the laughing stock of the Nordic community. Okay, I get
Danes.
that.
You guys said Danes. I heard something different.
Yeah, no. we're
It's
talking
my
about
running joke.
the Nordic beef. I love it.
Yeah.
Something about those Great Danes, huh?
I've only
They're
drank
not
twice
great.
in 2 months. You know, P-Town, I'm actually at about this, not quite. I may have drank 3 times because of the holidays over the last month, but I'm at about the same level. I'm not a prolific drinker, but when I heard that Lupin was having a drink, I couldn't help myself.
I'll have a drink with you. I just don't want you to feel like this is a habit of mine, and I do this on the daily.
No,
Listen,
I would be one of those people criticizing you right along the people in the chat if those were my feelings about it. So know for now and forevermore that I view this the same way that I view sitting and smoking a joint every once in a while, or just relaxing with any manner of substance that, while it certainly alters your perception, as long as you do it in moderation, it doesn't overtake your perception. I think that's the key, is to just do it in moderation and allow it to be an enhancer of your reality rather than a changer of it.
I'll say this.
I didn't inspire. Hold on, wait. I would like
Yeah.
to reply to Christian.
Sure.
I didn't inspire anybody else to drink. That's upon their own volition. Aiden is a grown man, at least physically. I don't know mentally. Uh, Deviant is
Gonna
a
make me
grown,
cry.
Deviant is a grown adult. She can make her own decisions, and I'm a grown adult and I can make my own decisions. I never said for them. I never encourage them to drink. If they choose to drink, that's on them.
No, that's true. He never did, in all fairness, Christian. He never told me to drink. I came up with that on
And
my
I
own.
don't.
But
Deviant,
And
may I ask you a question?
yeah, sure, go ahead.
And if you don't want to answer this, you don't have to.
Of course.
Do you practice any type of witchcraft?
What do you consider witchcraft?
Whether it be white magic, black magic, or Egyptian occultism, going through the Book of Death, going through tarot cards,
I mean,
any type of that.
I mean, the Book of the Dead. I'm doing a translation of it right now. Not right now while we are talking, of course, but when I
So you're working on a translation of the Book of the Dead, which would be recorded in Egyptian hieroglyphs.
yes.
And you're trying to translate that into a English.
Yeah, to English. Yeah.
Okay. Why are you fascinated with the Book of the Dead? Would you not be more fascinated with the Book of Life?
Well, because
gotcha, Deviant.
the Book of the Dead is actually called the Book of Coming Forth by Day. So the Book of the Dead is just a name it's been given to kind of explain its utility as part of the rituals that were held for the Egyptians to pass to the other life. It's a book of it explains the soul's journey to the other side and things you need to know, like how to keep your buttocks jubilant, for example, because that's important.
Keep your buttocks. I'm sorry. What was that?
Jubilant. Jubilant. Yes, like
What does that
jubilee.
mean?
Woo-hoo.
It means it's got that badonkadonk. That's what it means.
that badonka donka don.
It has to do with your all you needing all of your body parts according to Egyptian uh, thought and mythology. You need all of your body parts on the other side for you to be able to live.
Will someone
Uh,
update me on Stump?
I,
P-Town,
I
Stump is in
will
the ICU right now. He's still
shut
in deep
up,
recovery
Aiden.
over what happened.
If
We
anything,
might be able to make it through the rest of the night. We're not quite sure, but we're really hoping that he might be able to pull through the next 24 hours. Please send your prayers to him because he certainly needs them after what happened.
Stump is doing perfectly fine. He's finding that the drama that we're having between these two channels is draining on him, and that he is almost to a point where he wants to take a break and go back to preaching, which I don't blame him. You guys can be very exhausting at times.
You could stop talking about us, like at any time,
He
and just
doesn't
not
talk
cover
about
us
you
and
guys.
worry about
All
us.
he's just worried about Gangster.
I mean, then he has other means of reaching out to Gangster besides making a giant scene on a YouTube channel and making that the hyperfixation of the stream. Like, the reason why the stream went the way that it did is because you guys acted the way that you did in that stream, okay? So if you're
Meanwhile,
upset with how that happened, then
I'm not upset about anything. You guys really overestimate the way that I get upset. It's very hard to upset me.
well, I said if. I didn't say that you definitely were.
Do you think I was upset about anything?
I mean, you seem to, at the very least, be frustrated with the current state of affairs and how things are currently being conducted.
If anything, I was upset for Logan's mental comprehension of the gospel because the only reason I really come here is to really speak to Logan because I think he is overrun by people who do not have Christian values. And when the people that do have Christian values want to speak with Logan, they get overtalked. We could talk about how you did that with Stump, which we almost Achilles, I, and Stump were all watching at that same time, and every one of us at literally at the same time said that there was a demon manifesting in you, and it's not. It, the sad thing is, it's not a demon that we're afraid of. It's a demon that we want released from you.
You
Do you
see, you
not?
assume a level of competency there that I just don't have. See, at least demons were able to lead a rebellion against God. They might not have succeeded, but they actually fought against God, so they've got some chops that I just simply don't have, Lupin. So you're assuming far too much of me and my abilities if you think a demon would bother their time with the likes of me.
Well, the demon that you manifested is not a demon that we're afraid of. It's a very wimpy demon, you know. But do you? Let me ask you this: do you feel what you did to Stump was respectful? He wanted to have a conversation
Um,
with Logan, and do you feel like you respected Stump?
I feel like I respected him just as much as he has showed respect for me. I feel like I gave him an equal amount of respect as he has displayed towards me. And I gave him the same amount of fascination and candor with what he had to say that he expressed that he had towards what I had to say. So I only took what was given to me and gave it back to him.
Give me a second.
Gotta get that recorded.
So, so if you want, if you see, Stump would at least allow you to say what you had to say without constantly interrupting you. But Stump was trying to talk to Gangster, and you refused to quit talking in
Yeah,
order for Stump to talk to
that's
Gangster.
correct.
Do you think that's respectful of Gangster? And Gangster, I want to bring Gangster into this. Do you think that was respectful of Aiden?
Gangster can answer first.
Uh,
Do you think Ayden was being Do you think that Ayden was being disrespectful when Stump was trying to talk directly to you and he would not let you speak to him? Do you think that that was respectful?
Aiden said because he felt very disrespected by what happened and stuff. Aiden said with all the drama. That's what happened.
Okay, I want to know what you think though. Do you think that Ayden should have respected your channel and should have held his tongue and let Stump speak to you and get a response from you? And then Ayden could have gone back and responded in that term.
Just load the question a little more. Just pack a little bit more black powder into that question while you're loading it.
Is there any other way that I could put it?
I mean, you're putting it in terms that basically pressure him towards a specific answer. So, yeah, I'm telling you that you're loading your question down as much as you possibly can.
In my view, there's only one answer.
Is only one answer? Well, then that's great that you think that, but the fact that you're trying to pressure him towards one particular answer just goes to show that you're the one that's actually manipulative towards him, and you
Okay,
and Stump are the ones that are actually manipulative of his behavior. I actually sat back and let him answer. I didn't need to give him 20 different qualifiers of what happened in order to set him up for his answer. You were the one that needed to do that.
Let me ask you this, Ayden. Do you think your behavior towards Stump when he was trying to ask Gangster a direct question and you completely talking over him, do you think that was an appropriate reaction?
I think it was the only way to illustrate to Stump how utterly disrespectful it is to have complete and utter disregard for what someone has to say. Because Stump was not willing to listen to the actual content of what I was saying to him. So the only way to teach him that lesson was to show him what it is like and make him feel what it is like when someone has nothing but complete and utter disregard for what that person has to say. That's what I was doing there.
Can you recall a moment where Stump overtalked you so you could not get your point
That's not the
across?
point I was making at all. You totally missed the point of what I was making.
But that's what you did to Stump.
I understand that, and I just explained to you why I did that. I was illustrating to him what it is like because he told me earlier when I tried talking with Stump and when I actually posed a question to him, he said, "I'm not interested in what Ayden has to say. I'm only here for Logan." You could have called Logan. You could have texted Logan. You could have emailed Logan. If you're only interested in what Logan has to say, and you have other means of getting a hold of him without other people on the show. But he wanted to have his cake and eat it too. He wanted to go on a public platform that had more people than just Logan on, and he wanted to only talk with Logan, and that's not reasonable.
Fine. Well, let me ask you this: who is the host of this show?
Logan.
Logan, right? So, do you think that you should respect Stump's? Do you think that you should respect Stump's conversation with Logan, and you should remain quiet, or do you feel like what you did was justified?
Yeah, I absolutely feel like what I did was justified because that was the only way that Stump was going to actually know what it felt like for somebody to have complete and utter disregard for what someone else had to say because he's insulated himself otherwise from any one of these conversations or any one of these situations where he could actually be on the... It reminds me of when Missing Mod banned you from participating in the show that one time, and then you flew off the handle and made a whole stream about it and got all upset and salty about that. Like, that is a great example of somebody teaching you a lesson through, albeit harsh means, but a lesson was taught nonetheless.
You know, it's funny, Christian. I remember hip hop saying that your name doesn't match your philosophies, and I'm sorry. I'm reading your comments, and I'm tending to agree with them.
Uh,
So, Gangster, I would like for you to speak, please, because this is your channel. You have total control of your channel, Gangster.
Okay, let him speak.
Guys, it's hitting 12 midnight here. Sorry, I have to, and you guys could come on tomorrow.
Sure, you know what? We could
course.
probably continue this in part 2 tomorrow, but Lupin, have some water, buddy. Have some water. It'll prevent the hangover. I know I'm gonna have a glass of water before I go to bed. So genuinely, one piece of advice. I'm not taking a jab at you. I'm being serious. One human to another. Drink some water, buddy.
Christian, if I was drunk, I would still make more biblical accurate points than you will ever do. Okay? You think you came from a monkey? Good luck with that, buddy, because that goes completely against scripture. Have a good
He
night,
doesn't think he came
Christian.
from a monkey.
And he believes he came from a monkey.
He does not.
He won't admit it, but he.
Oh, you know his
And,
real thoughts on that
Oh,
matter.
Okay,
everybody is called out Christian. Everybody is called out Christian. Oh, he is
let
the sock in the air that
let
just flows in
Gangster
whatever direction.
Ghost end the stream. He's tired. We're all tired.
Good
Okay,
night, good
attack,
night,
Claude.
Gangster Ghost, and I
Um,
do not care about what Claude has to say.
Well, I don't care what you have to say, but thanks for the welcome to
The
Gangster
the
Show,
feeling- the
you
feeling's
you
mutual.
drongo. But look,
You
if anything
drongo!
I'll start a stream now. I'll start a quick thing for anybody who wants to come on my
Oh,
channel.
may I
and just
may I join that
introduce
one?
yourself. You can go wherever you like, Dupin. And
Dupin?
Come on the
you know,
stream,
Are you drunk?
no, I'm not.
Oh, okay.
What?
So then you're just naturally
But you're just moronic,
you're-
which
you're-
appears drunk.
Okay.
you're just naturally stupid then.
Good night, Gangster Ghost.
Look, you can't win in a fight against me, Lupin. You really are a drongo. You've shown it all the way
Thanks.
through.
I
It's
could
so
win a
funny.
fight against you
I
while
think-
I'm
I
asleep.
think
my
Dustin was
friend.
right when he said you had a well, he probably exaggerated with the room temperature IQ. I doubt it's even that.
Yeah, no, maybe it's a freezer IQ for all I care.
Oh my goodness, I'm just sick of your drongoism. You know, you come on
Oh,
these
we're-
channels
we're-
and
we're-
try
we're
and know
sick-
everything.
We're
Gangster
sick of
Ghost
your
end the
pervertism
stream,
and you
You're
please.
just
want.
a fool.
Gangster.
Sick of it.
Gangster.
Anyway, I'll run a show
I'll
now.
join, I'll
Alright,
join
I'll
your.
see you on the show.
Close.
I'll join your
See you on
stream,
the show,
Claude.
Claude.
I'll
You
join your
can
stream,
go on
Claude.
my show if I'm allowed on yours, but you already banned me, of course, because you're a chicken.
Hey, no, I invited you guys to join.
No,
the
yeah,
stream.
you
Just
banned
join.
me. I've tried to make
Yeah,
comments.
you were ba-
you
you were ba-
banned
you-
me. So
you
you're
were-
just
you
a
were ba-
chicken.
You were banned
just
for
a
comments, but
chicken.
hey, shut your gob, shut your gob,
No,
and
no, you've spoken up.
shut your gob. Thank you, Gangster. Please close the show out.
Okay, bye.
Good night, everyone.
Thank you very much,
Thank
Gangster.
you.
Gangster, I love you.